Some people were frightened as they screamed and asked if their leader was okay. The protagonist seemed to be in bad shape while a team member told him to open his eyes. After hearing that, he woke up with a pained expression, asking what had happened to the subjugation. One of the men had tears streaming down his face. Then he said the subjugation had been a success and that they had managed to defeat the final boss. Our hero smiled and said they really had accomplished it. Thinking that this creature was far superior to all others, it took 3 years to capture it, with hundreds of people losing their lives along the way. The protagonist's companion said he shouldn't close his eyes, while the girl mentioned that the medical team was already arriving. Our MC wondered if his friends thought he was a fool, saying that half of his body was already completely gone. He then looked at the crying girl and told her to gather the rest of their team. And after that, everyone could finally move on after everything that had happened. Heading to another world, he said he could only apologize at that moment. The protagonist had been the first hunter in Korea and the person who established the hunter's system, but he met his end with the last boss that existed in the dungeons. Elsewhere, someone slapped a boy on the head. Those people were several boys trying to bully him, so a red-haired teenager asked if his classmate really hadn't bought them the snack. Surrounding the boy, they said his friend had to be joking. However, the one being bullied was our hero, and he thought those kids had made him their lackey in his previous life. The protagonist remembered falling, wondering if he had truly been eliminated since he couldn't move. A voice said that humanity could now belong to its race since Junwoo had been eliminated and no one was left to stop them. While falling, the MC told the voice to stop talking nonsense because there were still plenty of hunters to defeat the monsters. He continued by saying they had learned everything about those creatures and built various weapons to prepare for the final battle, and there would be even stronger hunters. The voice said the system he created wasn't bad and that it would return in 40 years, and upon hearing that, our hero asked it to repeat what it had said. That being said, that when it returned, it hoped humanity would truly have many resources to fight against its race. The MC replied that when that happened, the monster would be nothing more than a cockroach compared to humankind. And in another place, he opened his eyes. The boy was somewhat confused and wondered if he was in a hospital. He said he had forgotten many things and couldn't remember something important, but he knew that just moments before, he had been fighting the final boss called Gigantina. Looking at himself in the mirror, our hero asked whose face that was. Taking the mirror in his hands, the protagonist wondered if he had turned back into a teenager, but said it was impossible because that face didn't resemble his at all. He said he would need to gather as much information as possible to figure out where he was. In another place, a man accompanied by a doctor said the boy had finally woken up. This person approached, saying he was a police officer and was there to ask our hero some questions. The officer gave the MC's information, but he replied by saying he had actually been born in 1975. After hearing that, the man and the doctor looked confused, wondering if the boy was out of his mind. He asked if the boy could remember what happened before the accident. Our hero said he could only remember that he had taken a lot of damage while fighting monsters in Gigantina. The officer asked the doctor if Junwoo was insane, but the doctor said the boy needed more rest before being questioned again. However, he keeps asking if that boy really thought he was the hunter Junwoo, and the doctor says it's normal for someone to see illusions after an accident. Our MC asked what situation he was in, and upon hearing that, the man realized the boy couldn't remember anything. Then he says that on the previous day, the protagonist had been ambushed by Bangsini, but since it was very early in the morning, there were no witnesses. He asks if the boy really couldn't remember anything that had happened, but our MC doesn't answer. The policeman sighs and, placing his hands on his shirt, says he understands the situation. Handing a card to Junwoo, he says that if he remembers anything, he can call him. Leaving the room, the doctor says the protagonist should rest, but before he goes, our MC says he needs something. A bit confused, the doctor asks what the boy wants, and the protagonist asks the man to tell him what year it is. Answering our hero's question, he says it is the year 2051, and after hearing this, the MC is shocked. Trying to stand, the boy says that this could only be a lie. In the next moment, he opens the curtains of his room while thinking he must have misheard. He says that Seoul was a ghost city that ended up like that because of battles against monsters. That was where the homeless stayed with the refugees, suffering all kinds of mistreatment, and he says he can't believe it has changed so much. Looking around, he can see several buildings all over the city, and families enjoying themselves with their children, wearing happy expressions. With tears streaming down his face, our MC says that with this view, he believes his comrades did a good job. While still watching, he wonders if his friends are still alive, and since 42 years have already passed, they're probably together by now. However, in the next moment, he realizes that all those years have passed and has a shocked expression. He says to himself that 42 years have gone by, and according to that voice, it wouldn't be long before the monsters appear again. But suddenly, the entire building began to tremble. The megaphone started announcing that there was a serious crisis in the hospital, and upon hearing that, the protagonist became alarmed and wondered what was happening. Somewhere else, a portal appeared and many people fled in fear while someone shouted to call the Hunters Association. Our hero started running out of the hospital, while thinking he could see how much monster subjugation had improved after 42 years, and arrived where many people were gathered. After observing what was happening, he was surprised and wondered what was going on with those people that made them stand in front of the portal. A soldier was saying that a hunter would take part and everyone should stay away from the portal so they wouldn't get hurt, because in 10 minutes they would lure the monster out of the dungeon. And hearing this, the MC got angry while wondering why. He remembers asking his companions if they understood what he said and says he will repeat it. The MC says that when the monster leaves the dungeon, the hunters lose control of the area, and it's common for the city to be wiped out when that happens. And for that reason, subjugation should happen inside the dungeon, and that was a rule that could never be broken. Then he asks if they understood, and the men say they won't forget it. In the present, the protagonist was moving through the people while saying the guards were crazy. A reporter was asking if they were ready to start broadcasting. But before they begin, the MC asks what they think they're doing. He was questioning why they were letting the monsters out of the dungeon, because monsters aren't children's playthings, and it made no sense. However, before he could finish speaking, people began to applaud and cheer for the arrival of a huntress. There were some guards in front of a car. Someone started getting out of it while everyone applauded. The woman's name was Go Eun-chae, and after she arrived, the journalists started taking lots of pictures. Our hero was surprised and wondered if she was a modern-era hunter. Since she was very young, he couldn't tell what her abilities were. The girl who appeared began to walk toward the portal, and a light appeared on her wrist as she activated something. The system window said that permission was granted and the use of B-grade abilities was activated. A guard shouted that monsters were coming out of the dungeon. A creature crackling with lightning across its body appeared and stood in front of the woman. An ice-based ability began to manifest on the girl's sword. The monster then charged toward her, but without any difficulty, the woman managed to dodge, and she attacked the monster with her sword, successfully striking it. Some girls were watching, and one of them said it was amazing, while another mentioned that Go Eun-chae looked like she was dancing as she fought. A boy pointed at her and said that when he grew up, he would also become a hunter who protected people. And our MC was observing the situation with an awkward smile. Returning to the fight, the girl took a leap. She then rushed toward the monster, which was also attacking her. She launched several ice spikes at the creature. All her strikes hit the werewolf's body. With those attacks, the monster was defeated. People were very impressed and started shouting her name multiple times. Seeing this, the protagonist began to laugh. However, with an indignant expression, he said it shouldn't be like that, and asked if that was what she called the subjugation. Our MC thought everything had turned into a mess, because a novice hunter was acting like a celebrity, relying only on her abilities to fight, and the support was truly ridiculous since it didn't even back up the main attacker. He believed the worst part of it all was what she had just done, since she performed a subjugation in a real-life situation with many variables and numerous civilians around. And in the next moment, our MC kicked the camera that was filming. One of the guards got angry and asked what the boy thought he was doing, and the protagonist questioned whether they were crazy to bring monsters out of the dungeon and fight them where there were civilians. Because if a monster leaves the dungeon, it can adapt to that environment and go berserk. And after hearing this, the man looked confused. While our MC kept talking about various issues, people were recording and asking if he wasn't just a student. He continued by saying that the support was terrible, and after hearing this, the guys got irritated. The protagonist asked if they really thought this was a subjugation since it looked more like a street performance. However, the girl asked if he was from the academy and said that what she had shown was everything they had learned in class. She then said our hero was very energetic but shouldn't think everything was taught by the instructors, because the battlefield was very different from the rumors he had heard, and the MC asked if she really called that a battlefield. With a menacing look, he questioned how she dared say such things in front of him. After seeing the MC's gaze, the girl looked frightened. But before he could continue speaking, the guards surrounded him, saying he couldn't act that way. The MC didn't care and asked if her name was Go Eun-chae. He said that if she continued with that skill level, she should be ashamed to call herself a hunter. However, the girl merely said to herself that it felt like school, and it was difficult. After hearing that, the protagonist was a bit confused. Elsewhere, he was sighing as he remembered the voice saying it would return in 42 years. Recalling that, he said that if things continued like this, everything would be over, because the hunters were weaker than just any monster, and he needed to prepare for the calamity. But in the next moment, he said there was still a chance, because his group might still be alive, and if he managed to contact them, he could do something. Yet he wondered how he could find them, as he couldn't just ask around randomly. The boy said he still had a shot, because the girl from earlier mentioned an academy for hunters, and that meant someone must have created that institute in the last 30 years, and only that person could have done it. Our hero remembered asking his friend if he really wanted to create a school, and his companion said that was exactly it. Because if the war ended, he wanted to build an academy to look after the next generation. He also said Junwoo should choose the name, and upon hearing that, the protagonist asked if he really should do it. With a calm expression, he said the academy could be called Korea Hunters College. The man replied that the name was too simple and wouldn't attract any attention. In the present, our MC was in front of a school, while wondering if his companion had really given it that name, and he says that this school was quite large. Someone asks what the protagonist was doing there, and questions whether he was a student since they had never seen him at that school, and our MC says it's none of that, and that he's only looking for someone. After hearing this, the old man says that if the boy came looking for Yunche, he should leave, and the protagonist says that wasn't the case either. Then he asks if the guard knew someone named Bae Wushik, and upon hearing that, the man became confused. Then he questions whether the protagonist was talking about his boss, and the MC says that's exactly right, and that he'd like to meet the owner. The old man says that someone who wasn't a student couldn't see the director, and asks whether the boy was a special admission student, and the protagonist gets confused after hearing this. Our MC thinks he didn't know what that meant, but says he really was a special student, and the guard says that if that's the case, he should follow him. The protagonist wonders why the guard looked at him as if he felt sorry for him. The two enter the building, and after a few minutes, our hero is startled by something. The reason was that there was a portrait of his old body inside the room, and seeing it, the boy asks why it was there. The guard says the protagonist should stop yelling in the school, and upon hearing this, the MC apologizes. However, he blushes as he wonders why his friend put a giant portrait of him at the entrance. While the two were walking, they found several pictures scattered all over the wall of the place, and there was one that said that Hunter Junwoo had stated that adventurers were made of 99% willpower and 1% talent. After seeing this, our MC wondered whether he had really said something like that, since he didn't remember. A few seconds later, they reach the director's office, and the guard knocks on the door. He apologizes and says that a boy would like to speak with his boss. A man says they can both come in, and before the protagonist meets the school director, the guard says that our MC shouldn't do anything foolish. After they enter, the guard says that the special student who was transferred has arrived, and upon hearing this, the man was confused because he didn't remember any special student entering this year. The guard says that the two can talk, and that he'll go do his job. So after he leaves, the protagonist has a serious expression while looking at Wushik. The director was walking toward our MC while saying that this situation was quite strange. With a serious expression, he says he hasn't heard of any special student who passed the admission process, and asks who the boy in front of him is, and says that if he can't explain what he was doing there, the boy would be punished. However, the MC doesn't care and only asks how his friend is doing. The man was confused by what he heard, since he didn't know this person. The protagonist continues and says he almost didn't recognize his friend, since he looked like an old man, and asks whether Wushik can recognize him, saying his name is Junwoo. The man was confused as he said that in his whole life, he had never seen someone so crazy, and he went to pick up a phone. He called the guard and said that the boy who was there needed to be removed, since they shouldn't let a random person into his office. But in the next moment, the protagonist asked where Sun Yang was. He asks how the MC knows that name, and the prota says that Wonshik used to chase after this woman and was always rejected, so there's no way he could forget. Then he asks if his friend managed to marry her, and after hearing this, the director ran toward the protagonist. In the next moment, he grabbed Junwoo by the collar and shouted, asking who the hell the protagonist was and why he was saying those things. Our hero starts laughing and says he never imagined Wushik would grab him. And with an irritated expression, he says that a school director was really quite daring. After seeing this, the man stopped holding the protagonist and looked shocked. The protagonist began to dust off his shirt and says that he had told his friend many times before that even if he were in front of the greatest monsters or the most powerful people he met, he should take control properly so that his target couldn't escape. And after hearing that, the director was frightened and asked if our boy was his leader. Some years ago at the subjugation management headquarters, someone was shouting while asking what everyone was doing. That person was pointing a blade at a woman's neck while saying they should bring him medicine and food. The MC asked what had happened, and a man said the young guy had been expelled from his base because he had a disease and was now looking for medicine. The protagonist asked if that was true, and the man said they suspected the information was correct because the young man's brother had a disease. Our hero began to think about what to do. Then he started walking toward the person who was holding the woman hostage. Seeing this, his companion wondered what their leader was trying to do. The man shouted loudly that the MC should back off and not come any closer, or the girl would be eliminated. However, our boy didn't care and kept walking. Seeing that, the young man said if the protagonist got any closer, that girl would really be done for, but the MC replied that the man could do whatever he wanted. Hearing that, both of them were confused, while the woman asked if she was hearing things correctly. The protagonist said he was telling the truth since nobody would care if she was eliminated, given there were plenty of monsters roaming the city. The young man was about to say something, but the MC asked if he didn't have the courage to do it, and he said that if the man wanted the medicine to save his brother, he should try to eliminate everyone there in order to get it, and upon hearing that, the man was surprised. Continuing, he said that to save someone, another person had to be eliminated, as that was how they were living. Whether it was monsters or people made no difference, because if they were going to do something, it had to be done properly. But if he couldn't even manage that, he should stop trying useless things, and just get eliminated alongside his brother. And after hearing that, the man was stunned. In the next moment, the man threw the woman aside and began to advance toward our hero. He tried to strike the protagonist with his blade, but the MC easily dodged. Then he grabbed the man's arm. Without any difficulty, he performed a judo throw. After that throw, the side character cursed, and in the next moment he was slammed to the ground. The man tried to get up with an angry expression and said he would eliminate our boy. Cursing the MC even more, he attempted to slash him again with his blade. With a smile on his face, Jungwoo said that was the spirit, and his system window stated that the user had equipped an item. However, without any difficulty, the protagonist parried the man's attack. Then he put his finger in front of the man's face. The system window said the user would use the skill Explosive Flick, and in the next moment, our hero landed a blow, which sent the side character flying, crashing into the wall. The man passed out from the hit he received. Jungwoo called his companion and said they should look for the man's younger sister, as she might be nearby, and he still had medicine for her, but the guy said their leader should reconsider, because the girl had a disease that could be transmitted, but our hero didn't care, since if that were really true, the man would have already been eliminated. He said his companion should go quickly, and upon hearing that, the young man went to do what the protagonist ordered. The MC said his friends should take that person to their base and give him food. Wushik was about to ask something, but our hero said that was exactly it, because from that moment on, they were all companions and part of the same team. In the present, the protagonist's friend was asking if he really was that person, because he looked like a child, and upon hearing that, the MC said he also had no idea what had happened and had just woken up in that body. And the director kept observing our hero, who felt a bit embarrassed. Jungwoo said his friend seemed not to believe any of it. The man said that was obvious because no one would believe that someone who was eliminated would come back looking like a child. The MC said it would be better to tell him what happened the first time they went hunting. And after hearing this, Wushik punched the protagonist. Elsewhere, the guard was running toward the director's office. The reason was that Wushik had called him, saying the guard should remove the boy from his office. The admission of special students was something that brought talented people to the school, which was why he thought the boy was one of the chosen. At the director's office door, he said he was there to apologize. While entering, someone shouts that his friend should stay focused. Basically, our hero was making Wushik practice apologizing. After seeing this, the guard wondered what was going on and then began to leave the room after witnessing it. The protagonist was shouting as he said that his friend should keep doing it and couldn't stop. A few minutes later, the MC had an irritated expression. Wushik looked a little embarrassed. The protagonist says that his face hurts, and the director apologizes for hitting his friend, saying he only did it because he mentioned his first mission. Our MC says the world had changed a lot, and the director agrees, saying it might seem strange to his friend. The protagonist says that it's obvious since even monster subjugation has become terrible, because one day ago, he saw hunters bringing a monster out of the dungeon, and Wushik asks if he was talking about the dungeon near the hospital. He says he already knew what his friend was thinking, and our boy asks why they're doing these things. The man says that after their leader sacrificed himself on the last mission, the world became very peaceful, and powerful monsters almost never appeared, and our hero asks if that was why they were bringing monsters into the streets. The MC yells that there's a limit to how reckless people can be, and the director says there were other reasons as well. Because there was no danger, it was hard to get sponsorship from big companies, which is why they had to do all these things. And now the hunters were becoming celebrities, and the way subjugations were handled before had changed. Our boy says that it's not too late to change all this nonsense. And he says that since his friend was the director of the Hunters Academy, he could change these things, but the man says he already mentioned it once. And he says that because high-ranking people were involved, he couldn't change the educational system by himself. The MC says that if they reunited with their companions, they might be able to do something, but the director says that the other members were the high-ranking people. And even though he hated to say it, there would be several members of his team who wouldn't be happy about the protagonist's return. The MC asks if his friend thought so too, and the director is surprised and says it's not that at all. Our hero sighs and says everything has been a mess since he returned. Wushik says his friend shouldn't think that way because the world was free from attacks, and their leader could start a new life now. However, our boy says that the final boss would be revived. After hearing this, the director is a bit confused. Then he asks our hero to repeat himself, and the protagonist repeats that the final monster would return. Wushik was confused and asked if Gigantiana would really return, and the protagonist says that's exactly it, and even if he didn't want to believe it, that was the reality. Because when he was about to be eliminated, he heard a voice saying the final boss would return in 42 years. Wushik says that can't be true and asks if his friend misheard. The MC asks if his friend didn't believe him, since he had seen someone return after 42 years, but didn't believe the most powerful creature could return, and the director feels awkward. Our hero says he's leaving because it no longer made sense to stay there, and the man asks what his friend planned to do. The protagonist says it's obvious. He would do as before and handle everything alone. Wushik says his leader wouldn't be able to do anything with the body he has now, and the MC says he's already done it once and would do it again. But before leaving, the protagonist says there's one more thing he has to say. Then he asks where his sword is, since it would be complicated to do everything alone without it. Wushik says it's in storage, and because it's a valuable item, it can't be taken out, and the MC asks if he can't get his items. The director says that the person in charge there is Seokdu, and the protagonist is glad that his companion got that position. That was perfect, because he always obeyed his orders and was very loyal. Wushik says that Seokdu was one of the people who would be angriest about the protagonist's return. The MC says that nothing was really working out, and the man replies that there was still an alternative because Seokdu's granddaughter studied at the school. He had heard that the chairman loved his granddaughter very much and couldn't say no to her. Our boy asks if he really had a granddaughter. Then he asks if he should really get close to her to solve these problems, and the man says it would be easier that way. Our hero says it would be better to do that and asks for her name. The director says the girl's name is Go Eunchae, and that the MC probably met her in the collapsed dungeon near the hospital, and upon hearing this, Junwoo says it could only be a joke. He asks if the girl really is Seokdu's granddaughter, and the man replies that's exactly the case, asking if there was any problem. The MC says he was very angry after seeing the subjugation on a street and ended up fighting with her, and upon hearing that, the director is surprised. Wushik asks if his friend hadn't hurt anyone, and the MC says he obviously wouldn't do that. He had just said a few things because he was angry and then left. He then thinks about what he said and how she defeated the monster, and he shouts that he has no idea what to do at this moment. Our hero places his hands in front of Wushik. Seeing that, Wushik is confused and wonders what his friend is planning to do. He asks if Junwoo needs something, and our hero says he wants the academy enrollment form. Hearing this, the man is very surprised and asks if that's really true. The protagonist tells his friend to just give it to him because his weapon is in someone else's hands, and to get it back, he will approach Seokdu's granddaughter. Wushik says that's not the problem because the MC is too old, and upon hearing that, the protagonist asks what he means by that. The man asks if the protagonist really intends to enroll at his age, and hearing that, the protagonist is shocked. The director says a lot of things to our hero, and upon hearing them, our boy gets irritated. He says he's not there to make friends and only wants to recover his weapon, and upon hearing this, Wushik sighs. He says their leader is still the same, so the protagonist says that's obvious, and that's why he was eliminated before everyone else. In the next moment, the director hands the admission card to our hero. He says the MC shouldn't be too hard on the kids, and the MC says he wouldn't because he's not that kind of person. Wushik says our hero shouldn't hurt them because they're young, and the protagonist says he'll decide that in the moment. The man says he's not joking because those kids are very weak, and the MC yells that he already got it. The next day, inside the academy, someone was looking for their classroom. That person was the protagonist, and he was thinking that now that he was joining a class, he felt nervous. He tells himself that he shouldn't draw too much attention while searching for Go Eunchae. However, someone asks the protagonist what he's doing, standing in front of the classroom. That person is a girl, and she says that if he's not going to enter, he should move away from the door because he's in the way. The MC apologizes and says he's already going in, but for some unknown reason, the girl moves closer to the protagonist's face, and seeing that, he feels awkward. She asks if, by any chance, our boy is the dog from yesterday. Hearing that, the protagonist is confused. Entering the room, she says she didn't expect the transfer student to be someone like him, but it doesn't matter much because it has nothing to do with her, though the MC asks why she's calling him a dog. She doesn't answer, and the protagonist is even more confused because she said that and then left. He thinks that kids nowadays are really more complicated to deal with. After entering the classroom, he felt many eyes on him. That was because all the students were looking at our big guy. A group of boys was talking among themselves, wondering if the person who entered the room wasn't the dog from the day before. Even some girls were saying the same thing about the protagonist. Realizing this, the MC asks himself what's going on because it's his first day of school, yet everyone is staring at him. But he thinks it would be better to ignore all of it, and tells himself he thought the academy would be different because nobody had his item. Our hero was looking for a place to sit, but he was surprised by something. The reason was that there was a bouquet of flowers on his desk with a message from Wushik congratulating the MC. Seeing this, he feels a bit confused and wonders if they really give these out when students arrive. And sitting down, he says it was just a waste of money. In the next moment, he was slightly startled because someone was making a lot of noise. The reason was that someone was shouting while criticizing their teacher. This person was a boy who was complaining that his teacher forced him to go to school. After this person arrived in the classroom, all the students became afraid. Our hero was thinking that kids really hadn't changed and continued to act like they were the best. And after noticing that the hero was there, the boy was surprised. Then he smiled, thinking a new friend had arrived. He began to approach while saying he couldn't believe the protagonist was in his class, because the dog from the previous day had shown up in his room, and he didn't expect the MC to be there since he had messed with Go Eunchae and spoken poorly of hunters. Our hero was surprised and asked how the boy knew these things. He says that the MC's video was everywhere, and the protagonist thinks he doesn't know anything about that. And giving a slap to the protagonist, the boy says he couldn't believe that even after saying those things, he managed to get into the academy. He says the MC was crazy because he was only an E rank and had caused trouble with Eunchae, but the protagonist was starting to get annoyed. The boy puts his hand in front of our hero and says it's a pleasure to meet him, and says his name is Jusuk, and probably our boy already knows him. The protagonist had an irritated expression as he remembered Wushik saying his friend should endure the insult. Then, in the next moment, our boy also extends his hand and says his own name. After hearing this, Jusuk starts laughing while saying that the MC's parents must have been fools for giving him the name of a famous hunter. Our MC was laughing on the outside, but he was telling himself he had to hold back and not hit that kid. The boy asks what it was like to see Go Eunchae up close. Then he says her figure was amazing and her face was decent for a girl her age. And he starts laughing again, saying that even though she was a director's granddaughter, she couldn't be that arrogant. And if it weren't for those problems and she didn't have such a determined look, she'd be his type. However, someone says that Jusuk shouldn't go too far, and upon hearing this, both the protagonist and the boy were surprised. This person was the girl from before, and the boy asks why she's talking about those things again. The girl says that Jusuk should look in the mirror before commenting on someone else's appearance. After hearing this, he asks if she's lost her mind because previously he let it slide, but now she'd gone too far. But the girl says that the two of them were in Class E, so they were trash. However, the boy says he's not on the same level as her since he used to be in Class B, and she says it doesn't matter because he doesn't know how to use his own abilities. And for him to still be in school, his father's connections must be incredible, because if not for that, he would have already been expelled. And after hearing this, Jusuk becomes angry. Then he moved toward the girl to hit her. Noticing this, she closed her eyes in fear. But for some reason, the boy was very surprised. The reason was that he was on the floor. After seeing this, all the students were shocked and wondered how our hero had the courage to do that. Jusuk asked if Meme Junwoo was crazy for doing it. However, our big guy had an indifferent expression as he looked at the boy. Jusuk asks if the protagonist really did that, and our hero says that if the boy wants, he can do it again. But Jusuk just gets up and asks if the MC really wants trouble on his first day of school. Then he shouts that he'll have to beat our hero so he'll understand his place in the school's hierarchy. However, our protagonist doesn't care and just laughs at the boy. And with an irritated expression, the MC asks if the boy has ever been in a critical situation to be talking like that. The boy doesn't care about what the protagonist said and just advances toward him. But without any difficulty, the MC manages to dodge while thinking that this kid's punch was terrible, and the movements he made were pathetic. Even a goblin could take him down. However, before they could continue the fight, someone entered the room and asked what her students were doing. Jusuk gets annoyed, saying that of course, the teacher had to show up right at the moment of his fight. As he leaves, he says he will find the Meme Junwoo later so they can fight, and he tells the protagonist that they should meet behind the school because they were going to do something fun. A few hours later, Wushik had an irritated expression. He then asked how the MC had already gotten into trouble on his first day of school, and upon hearing that, the protagonist said he had been holding back a lot. Wushik says that he had already cleaned up the mess the MC made, but he didn't know what Jusuk would do. And upon hearing that, Junwoo asks what his friend meant. The man explains that the boy the MC hit earlier was the son of the minister of the subjugation department, and that the boy did whatever he wanted, and since his father was an influential person, he never had any problems. Our hero says he now understands how that kid ended up that way, and the director tells the protagonist that he should be more careful, and if the MC tried to fight Jusuk again, there would be nothing he could do, to which the protagonist replies that he understood and would handle it in his own way. Outside the office, our hero sighs. At that moment, the girl from earlier asks why he acted that way, startling the protagonist. She asks if the MC didn't know who he had messed with, but he says he doesn't care since he never liked ill-mannered kids. Then he asks why she was trying to fight the boy, as Jusuk was only talking about Anche. But in the next moment, he is surprised, and he thinks that the girl standing before him looks very similar to the person he had seen during the subjugation. Looking at a badge on her shirt, he sees the name Go Ahian. He then asks if she is Eunche's younger sister, and she responds that she is. The MC thinks this is great since he could use this girl, but in the next moment she says she isn't really Eunche's younger sister. Because they had different mothers, she wasn't considered her father's daughter and wasn't acknowledged as part of the family. After hearing that, our hero feels awkward and asks if she talks to her grandfather. She says they have a great relationship because he was the one who removed her from the family registry. Upon hearing this, all of our boys' hopes were completely crushed. The girl apologizes, saying that since she isn't part of their family, the MC wouldn't get any compensation for helping her, and since he was a new student, he should find someone to rely on instead of being alone at the academy. She says she thought our hero was different from the others, but in reality, he was just like everyone else and only cared about status. The MC replies that she isn't any different either, as she judged him just because he was a special admission student, and that discussing family history and special admissions was ridiculous, especially for kids. However, the girl tells the protagonist to wait, and he will understand what it really means to be a special student at the academy. But he doesn't care about any of that and just keeps walking. After seeing that, the girl feels a bit embarrassed as she thinks about what just happened. Elsewhere, the MC is telling himself that he thought it would be easy, but now he will have to find another way to get close to Eunche. And at that moment, someone appears behind our hero. This person asks if the protagonist's name is Junwoo, and if he is a special student from Class E. Our protag is surprised and wonders who this person is, but he just asks what they want from him. Some boys were watching the protagonist while laughing at him, and more people started arriving after the man appeared. Suddenly, our boy found himself surrounded by 5 people in the school hallway. The man tells the MC to follow them, or else he will be humiliated in front of everyone. Realizing the situation he was in, the protagonist thinks he is starting to get a headache. Inside a warehouse located within the school, our hero was following the boys who had appeared earlier. The MC wondered if this was their hideout since the smell there was terrible. Someone said that their friend had finally arrived. That person was Jusuk, and he said he would ask something before the 6 of them created unforgettable memories. He questioned why a special student had tried to fight him, as it didn't make sense and even felt like a dream. Our big guy asked why they always called him a special student and whether that was an important title. After hearing this, Jusuk was surprised. He said that someone who got in through connections dared to speak in front of him as if they were someone important. He added that if he weren't being punished, he would teach the MC a lesson himself, but the protagonist should be grateful because his friends were kind. Then he shouted that his companions could begin their work. After hearing this, one of the boys tried to kick the protagonist, but he easily dodged. Our hero was surprised since the boy who tried to hit him fell to the ground on his own. Juseok laughed and said the protagonist was good at dodging. However, more people started running toward the MC, saying they would teach him a lesson. With no difficulty, our hero dodged an attack from one of the boys. He kept avoiding all the attacks while asking if the teachers didn't teach basic combat skills. The man from earlier was running towards the protagonist while shouting for him to shut up. But this time, our big guy didn't dodge and landed a knee strike to the face of the extra. He thought that this person was really ridiculous since he couldn't even do basic things. After receiving the attack from our hero, a lot of red liquid started pouring from the boy's nose. Then he collapsed on the ground, leaving all the extras in shock. They were wondering how our hero had managed to do that alone. The protagonist asked why no one else was trying to attack him and said they could come since Jusuk had mentioned they would create unforgettable memories. After hearing this, the boy became very irritated, cursing our Junwoo. With an excited expression, our hero said that if they were going to do something, they should do it properly. Elsewhere, Go Ahian was walking through the school corridors while badmouthing our big guy. She remembered that the MC had said the things she spoke were ridiculous. She said that the protagonist talked all that, but he didn't know anything about what was happening. Then she noticed a girl saying that Jusuk's group had taken Junwoo somewhere. Other people were saying that his school life was completely over and that he was the special student who set the record for being abandoned the fastest. Someone asked if the teachers had been informed, and another person replied that no one wanted to get dragged into this mess. Go Ahian said that the protagonist deserved to go through this since he acted as if he was better than everyone else. However, she suddenly recalled everything he had said about her. The next moment, she stopped walking. Then she started running somewhere. Inside the warehouse, our hero was looking at the 3 boys who had brought him there. Jusuk asked if his friends were playing around, as they only needed to charge forward and hit the MC. However, the boys were afraid since he had defeated the strongest among them with a single strike. Our hero said that his classmates were scared for no reason since he hadn't done anything special, and our big guy commented that their mentality and skills were similar to a child. After hearing this, Jusok was shaken to his core. Looking at his friends, he said that the boy should use his ability to fight our hero. One of them said that if they used their techniques, they would get caught and be expelled from the academy, but Jusok said they just had to make sure they weren't caught. After hearing this, the boys started preparing to attack again, and they had bracelets on their wrists. The protagonist thought that they were using the same item as Go Eunchae and that carrying swords was probably more difficult. However, the boys didn't have the courage to attack our big guy and remained still. After seeing this, Jusok jumped from where he was. He called his companions cowards and, showing a bracelet, activated something that granted him permission to use his abilities. One of the boys said that if his friend got caught using that, he would be punished, but Jusok told him to shut up. Removing an item, the system states that the user's skill rank was D and that he could use his abilities from that moment on. Our hero watched the scene with an expressionless look. The window displayed that a spear had been given to the owner. Jusok declared that he would make our hero beg for forgiveness and see how long he would last. The protagonist calls the boy a child and asks if he even knows how to use abilities. A bystander asks if the protagonist is an idiot since he was already using a weapon. Grabbing a broom, the MC asks if Jusok really thought summoning an item was an ability, and he says that the bystander was truly someone who knew nothing. In the next moment, our big guy pointed his broom in Jusok's direction. With an angry expression, he asks how that kid dared to use an ability on another person outside a dungeon. In the academy's office, someone was telling their colleague that they heard one of her students who enrolled today had already gotten into trouble, and he says the student was bold since he had tried to fight Jusok, who was from Class B, and that it was strange for a special student to be placed in Class E, since that meant he had no talent as a hunter. But upon hearing this, the woman says that wasn't true. After hearing that, the man was confused, and she told him he was mistaken. The reason he was in that class was because he didn't take the aptitude test, and upon hearing this, the man was even more puzzled. Because those who skipped that test usually had a combat level so high that it couldn't be measured, he asks if he was really excluded from the evaluation. Up to that point, the only student to receive that classification was Go Eunchae, and he asks if the two were on the same level. The man says that someone with such talent wouldn't be sent to the lowest class, but the woman explains that the director had ordered the MC to be placed in Class E so he wouldn't stand out. He says that's strange because hunters usually want to stand out, but the woman says she doesn't know the details. Before she could continue speaking, someone suddenly yells out her name. The person calling her was Go Eun, and the woman asks what happened. Our heroine says that the MC was in trouble. Back to our battle. The protagonist's broom and Jusok's spear were clashing against each other. The boy had an irritated expression because he was only managing to keep up with the protagonist. Our hero was effortlessly defending himself from all of Jusok's attacks using only his broom. The bystander was wondering what was going on since, by using his spear, he should be able to face someone of Baron level. Yet the protagonist was defending against all his attacks, and the broom hadn't broken. Frustrated, he shouts, demanding to know why he wasn't winning against an E rank. Then he tries to strike our hero again, who still had an indifferent expression on his face. Jusok kept cursing at the protagonist while trying to land a hit. However, Jinwoo states that a weapon skill wasn't something to be used carelessly. The bystander tells the protagonist to shut up, saying he was just a special admission student. The MC explains that the characteristics of an ability are defined by the weapon's core. Effortlessly dodging the attacks, he asks what kind of core Jusok thought his weapon had, and upon hearing that, Jusok angrily tells our hero to go to hell. The spear's core was a gift from his father, and that was how he got accepted into the academy. After graduation, it was almost guaranteed that he would become a hunter, and if he performed well, he could even join the student council. But now he was struggling against a special student who was ranked E, and our hero lands a hit on the bystander's hand with his broom. The system announces that the user has lost his weapon and must retrieve it immediately, leaving the boy confused. The reason for this confusion was that the protagonist was now holding Jusok's spear. He tells the kid in front of him to pay close attention, to learn how a real hunter wields a weapon. But suddenly, everything inside the building went dark. The boys were confused and wondered what was happening, and one of them said it felt like it had turned into nighttime. However, things slowly returned to normal, becoming bright again. One of the bystanders tells his friend to look beneath his feet. Then all of them were shocked as they saw their own shadows emerging from their bodies. The man who had just taken a hit from our hero stood there, completely bewildered, thinking that something had been taken from him, and searching for the shadows since they had all disappeared. Our hero was surrounded by a dark aura. With a frightened expression on his face, the extra was thinking that this had to be a lie, and he was wondering if it was the same core from his weapon that he had used, as the reason for this was that our big guy was laughing wickedly while a large amount of corrupted aura flowed from his body. The extra was trying to back away from the protagonist and escape, but he had already completely soiled himself in this situation. As our hero pointed the spear at his neck, Jusok begged to be spared. With a ruthless expression, our hero was preparing to attack, and in the next moment, he thrust the spear toward the boy. After seeing this, the extra started crying and trying to flee. However, the system deactivated the weapon because a minute had passed, causing the spear to start disappearing. Junwoo said that this was probably enough while Jusok was unconscious. Our big guy started kicking the boy's body to try and wake him up, and he told the extra to wake up already. Seeing this, the boy began to open his eyes, but the moment he saw the MC, he screamed in fear, and the protagonist said that he hadn't done anything, so the boy should get up. The extra was trying to stand while looking at the protagonist in fear. Our hero called Jusok a child, and with a peculiar expression, he said that the boy should answer his question. The MC said that weapons and abilities existed to capture monsters and asked if using them outside the dungeon wouldn't be dangerous. But Jusok remained silent and didn't answer. However, our big guy said that he wanted a response, and in the next moment, the extra said that he agreed and admitted it was very dangerous. The protagonist said that if he ever saw the boy using that in front of him again, there would be a punishment. Then, looking at the boy who had surrounded him, the protagonist told him to come forward, and he said that the extra should land a few more punches on his body, which left the man confused. Junwoo said that he wanted to take the strongest punch and asked if the extra wanted people to laugh at him since he had taken on a special student and still ended up beaten. The boy thanked him but asked for the reason, and the MC said that he didn't want his identity to be discovered. The extra asked if he could really do that, and Junwoo said that it had to be the strongest punch, and if it didn't hurt, everyone there would get beaten. After hearing this, the man prepared to land an attack on our hero, and the moment he punched the protagonist's face, the teachers entered the warehouse. Seeing what had happened, the woman said that there was red liquid from the MC spilled on the ground. Yubin said that what they had done had crossed the line since the boy had been transferred that same day, but the extra said that the red liquid on the floor was his. The teacher said that the students should go to the teacher's office. The woman told Go Aen to take our big guy to the infirmary, and the girl said she would do it. A few minutes later, the protagonist was walking while saying that the body was much weaker than he had imagined. Our hero looked at the girl and asked what she was doing since he was supposed to go to the infirmary, but she didn't say anything and just remained silent. Then the MC said that she didn't need to worry because he would handle it himself, and Aen asked who the protagonist really was. He replied that he was just a normal student who got what he deserved, and the girl said that he should stop pretending since she had seen everything. A few minutes earlier, the teacher had told her student to go check behind the academy, and when she was looking for our hero alone, she heard several people speaking loudly, so she went to check what it was. She had been scared because she saw what our big guy had done to the extras. Aeon asked why the MC was in Class E when he could be in the highest one, but the protagonist said that it had nothing to do with her. Since he didn't want anyone's attention, she should forget everything that had happened. Aeon said that the MC was right and that she was exactly like him. Hearing this, the protagonist was confused. She said that she had judged our hero just because he was a special student and had even despised him. Then the girl apologizes, and our hero says it's fine. He just wanted to go to the infirmary. But Aen says she doesn't want to bring it up, yet she asks our hero to help her because she wants to join the student council. Hearing this, the protagonist is surprised and asks her to repeat it. Aen says that to get into the council, she would need a sponsor, and the MC asks if they would be taking advantage of that person. The girl says that's exactly the case, and that's why no one wanted to be her sponsor. And just as she was about to ask the protagonist for help, he refuses, saying he was too busy. Aen said she wouldn't ask for help for free, and if there was something he wanted, she could do it. But he says that what he wanted, she wouldn't be able to do. She keeps offering many things to the protagonist, and he rejects all of them, but then she says she could introduce him to Unche. Upon hearing this, the MC asks if that's true. Our hero asks how that would be possible, considering she had been expelled from her home, but the girl says that's not it. She then makes a funny expression while thinking about what to say. With a smile, Aen says that since her sister was a member of the student council, they would be able to talk if she managed to get in. The MC reacts strangely, and he tells the girl to forget about it since he would handle it on his own. However, at that very moment, he starts feeling dizzy all over his body. Collapsing to the ground, the girl asks what was wrong with him, and the protagonist says that he's been asking for a long time to be taken to the infirmary. Elsewhere, an emergency meeting was taking place at the Hunter Academy. A teacher says that this was the second time Jusok had used his ability, and another person comments that this was grounds for expulsion. Owon agrees, saying that this time they couldn't just let it slide. The previous teacher nods, saying he had witnessed it with his own eyes. A man asks what the academy director's opinion was on this matter. Woo-shik looks at the teacher who brought Aeon. He asks if it was true that Jusok and his friends had beaten up the MC, and she confirms, saying she saw it. He asks again if she really saw the protagonist being attacked, and she gives the same answer. Our favorite director starts laughing and thanks the protagonist for getting beaten up, leaving the teacher confused. However, he states that using abilities was prohibited, and since it had happened before, there would be consequences. The director announces that, according to the rules, Jusok should be expelled, but someone interrupts. They ask to say something important, and Woo-shik allows it. The person who spoke seemed shameless and argues that expulsion was too severe a punishment for this situation. Woo-shik asks why, and the shameless man replies that it was normal for a teenager to act this way. My favorite teacher yells that this was much more than just a mistake. It could have led to a serious accident. But the scumbag says that Jusok was talented and would become a pillar of the academy, then asks if she would be fine knowing she destroyed his potential over a small mistake. Making Yubin sad, the man admits that Jusok was at fault and made a serious mistake. Continuing, he says that expelling him was too harsh and that a 1-week suspension would be enough for the boy to learn from his mistakes. Woo-shik says he understands what Jungmin means and that they will decide Jusok's punishment later. Then he declares that they've discussed enough and will now end the meeting. All the teachers start leaving the room of the second biggest GO8 of the story, and the shameless man smirks while looking at his phone. In the next moment, he's making a call. The person on the other end is the minister and Jusok's father. Jungmin tells him that the punishment will be just a suspension and that currently, the boy has the best chance of getting into the student council. With a sinister tone, he says he will teach the MC a lesson, and with the end-of-month evaluation coming up, he'll have no trouble doing it. The protagonist thinks that it's already been 3 days since he started school, yet he still hasn't seen Unche, and he thinks that the class he's in is full of trash with no talent to become hunters, and the lessons haven't taught anything important. Either way, there's nothing for him to stand out in at the moment, but before he can finish his thoughts, someone smacks him on the head. Now we are at the scene we saw at the beginning of the story, where they were bullying the protagonist. They said the same things as before, and these people were the same ones who had been beaten in the warehouse. Our big guy thought that, to others, he was just someone who had become an errand boy, but the reality was completely different. The student who had punched the protagonist said that the MC was hopeless and should follow him to learn a lesson. Then, the former extras started leaving the classroom. In the school hallway, the protagonist was following the boys, and the moment he spoke a word, the two of them flinched in surprise. Our hero said that the slap they gave to his head had hurt, and after hearing this, the 3 boys apologized. The MC said that they were taking out their frustration on him, and upon hearing this, the man said that it wasn't like that at all, and that he had only done it because Jungwoo said it should be as real as possible. The protagonist asked if they had done what he asked, but the man said that it was difficult for first-year students to get close to the student council. After hearing this, the protagonist asked if they hadn't found out anything, and the man said they had discovered a few things. He said that some people mentioned that Yunchi almost never went to school, and upon hearing this, the MC asked if that was all. The boy said that she didn't have many friends, and that the only person close to her was a fellow student council member named Jonghyun. The MC thought that this was the only useful piece of information and asked where this person was. The extra said that Jonghyun also barely ever came to school, and upon hearing this, the protagonist became angry. He told them to get out of his sight. After hearing this, the boys apologized and promised to bring useful information next time. The protagonist was starting to get a headache, and someone was behind him. That person was Aeon, and she said that this wouldn't work. After seeing the girl, he asked if she was following him. The girl said that Jonghyun was an official member of the student council, which meant he wasn't easy to meet. The MC asked why it was so hard to find these people when the student council wasn't a big deal. However, she said that it was very important because only the best students were in it, and the protagonist said they were just kids, and that everyone there was a student. Aeon explained that if someone became a member of the council, they would automatically become a hunter and could participate in real missions. And since all the council members' parents were influential, the teachers respected them, and even in school, they had absolute authority. She said they were on a higher level, and the way the MC was going about it, he wouldn't even find a shadow of Go Unche. Jungwoo asked if there was another way to find her. The girl was about to suggest that the protagonist join the student council, but he immediately refused. Upon hearing this, the girl was confused and asked why he kept refusing. Our hero said that Aeon had mentioned that only people with talent could stand out, but she didn't have any. The girl said that he just needed to teach her because she would work hard, and the protagonist started laughing. Then he said that if she tried to learn things from him, she would experience immense pain. The two of them fell silent after our big guy's remark. Then he said that he didn't know why Aeon wanted to join the council and told her not to worry about things she wasn't capable of. However, the girl said she didn't care about any of that. And hearing this, Jungwoo was surprised. She continued saying that if she couldn't get into the council, she would rather go to another world and begged our hero to teach her. Then she said that she wanted to learn everything related to subjugation and that she would dedicate herself to training no matter what. Jungwoo started walking away, saying that the break was over, and the girl said that the protagonist should give her an answer. Our big guy had a smile on his face as he thought that she had a lot of courage. It had been a long time since he had seen such determination in someone, and because of that, she might become useful in the future. Elsewhere, someone was congratulating their students, and that person was our favorite teacher, who asked if they were already aware of the monthly evaluation. For that reason, the students should put effort into the exam, as their scores had been bad last month. As she was about to continue speaking, someone arrived, apologizing for interrupting the class. That person was the shameless teacher, and he said he was there to announce changes to the upcoming monthly exam. The man stated that the test for first-year students would be a practical activity inside a dungeon. Upon hearing this, all the students were confused. Our heroine wondered if this was really happening, and the protagonist didn't look happy at all. After hearing this, the teacher said that it couldn't be true, but the shameless man told her not to raise her voice in front of her students. Yubin argued that a practical exam was excessive, and the shameless man asked if she was implying that Class E wouldn't be able to complete it. She couldn't respond, and the man said it didn't matter since the decision had already been made. He added that excluding students from education was considered discriminatory. Then he asked how long they planned to stay out of the academy's main events since students needed to complete the basic requirements to become hunters. The MC thought this was ridiculous because this class knew nothing. They were practically children, and he was sure something was wrong because no teacher would willingly put kids in a dungeon. The shameless man stated that if they didn't want to take the exam, they could simply give up and take remedial classes instead. Looking directly at the protagonist, the scumbag asked if the MC knew that withdrawing from the exam would lead to his expulsion from the school. As he walked away, the man said he would personally oversee the evaluation, and the protagonist thought that they were definitely hiding something. Since that teacher wouldn't be able to do this alone, someone with influence had to be backing him. In the director's office, Woo-shik confirmed that it was exactly as expected. The Minister of Civilization of Korea was behind it. The MC said he had been placed on a blacklist because of Jusok. The man apologized, saying he had tried his best to prevent it. However, since Myeonjin was an important figure in the academy and had deep ties to its history, he couldn't do anything about it. The protagonist responded that he understood it was a difficult situation. The director continued explaining some things, but the protagonist cut him off, saying he had heard enough and didn't want to listen to more complaints. Woo-shik asked what his friend's plan was to escape this persecution. The MC replied that, obviously, he would take the exam. He still hadn't seen Unche and couldn't afford to be expelled. Then, looking at the director, our hero asked if his friend had any useful weapons. The man answered that he had nothing. The MC said he couldn't enter a dungeon unarmed and asked for anything to fight with, but Woo-shik insisted that he had nothing. Items were too dangerous. After hearing this, our hero was a bit surprised. Grabbing his friend's arm, he asked if Woo-shik had finally grown the guts to lie to him. The director denied lying. Then, looking at the ring on his friend's finger, the MC asked what that item was. Upon hearing this, the second biggest GO8 of the story realized that his secret had been exposed. Since that was one of the rarest items, the Ring of Patelis, our hero and his friends started talking about the item. The MC asked if Woo-shik still had it, considering it had been 50 years. The man replied that he had only started using it after his leader was taken down. He then recalled the past, when the protagonist had saved him and brought him into his team, even though he was a nobody back then. Our hero asked what his friend was doing. Then, grabbing the ring from his hand, he declared that he would be using it. The protagonist smiled as he held the item, something he had used many years ago before he was eliminated. Woo-shik asked if it was really okay to use it, since that would mean he wasn't really an E rank. But the MC replied that since it was a dungeon meant for kids, it wouldn't be a big deal. Just before the protagonist left the director's office, the man said he had something else to say. Our hero asked what it was. Woo-shik started speaking, but before he could finish, Jungwoo shut the door and walked away. The man then thought to himself that maybe he should just step down as the academy's president. In the hallway, the shameless teacher was walking. Then, the next moment, he knocked on the door of the special department of the Hunter Academy. Upon opening the door, he was a little surprised by what he saw, and the reason for that was because our main heroine was in the room. He asked Go Eunchae why she had come to school for the first time. Upon hearing this, the girl questioned why he was barging into her room. The man became irritated and said that the teachers could come if they wanted, adding that the girl shouldn't be arrogant just because she was a council member. However, after he said that, our heroine didn't say anything. and after realizing this, the shameless man felt awkward, thinking that he should endure this for now since he was at the academy. He mentioned that there would be a first-year evaluation and that they had decided to assign someone from the student council as the supervisor, saying that this time it would be a practical exam. The girl asked if he was seriously saying that the first-year students would have a practical exam, and he confirmed, asking if she was interested in the event. However, she said she couldn't do it, and the man asked if Che could ask the other members, but she replied that her companions couldn't do it either. The shameless man questioned if she was saying they should postpone the practical exam, and she answered yes, because if it couldn't be held without the student council members, it would be better to leave it for another year, especially since there was no advantage for them, saying that if they paid her, she might consider it, and the man shouted, asking if she thought she was superior just for being a council member. Junmin said that he had supported her in becoming someone at the school and asked if she thought she had achieved it all on her own. Hearing this, the girl told him not to take his frustration out on her, saying that it was her grandfather who had judged the man and she had nothing to do with it. And she added that he should also treat the council members better, leaving Junmin at a loss for words. Then he asked where the girl had heard about his judgment, but before she could respond, someone entered the room. The person who walked in said it was great to see his teacher again and asked if there was anything important for them to discuss. The man said that he needed someone from the council to evaluate the exams, and the boy asked if Cha had agreed, to which the man replied that she hadn't. The student said that if she couldn't do it, he would since he didn't have anything important going on. Junmin asked if he could really help. The boy said it was obvious since he was also a student council member. Junmin thought that the person in front of him was a bit troublesome and wondered if he should give him the task. However, in the next moment, the man granted the student permission and told him to sign the document and send it to his teacher. Go Eunchi was observing the situation while the boy had a suspicious smile on his face. She asked what her friend would do with the subjugation schedule, and he said he would drop it since he wasn't as famous as her, so no one would care. Che asked why and said she didn't understand why he wanted to help Professor Cha when her friend didn't like the man. The boy said he was taking this job to keep an eye on the professor, because he didn't want the past accident to happen again, and he wanted to know the test results since he had heard that the boy from the hospital scene had entered the school as a special student in the first year. Che was confused and thought that the MC seemed to know a lot about subjugations, telling herself that she thought he was already a student. The boy said he had been curious, so he observed the protagonist, and on his first day, he defeated Jusok's group and also didn't participate in the evaluation, just like her. Then he asked the girl if she didn't want to know what the protagonist was like. Elsewhere in the Academy's training grounds, our hero was looking at some people and thought that some from Class C and D were missing. The B-rank students were participating and seemed very eager to show off their skills to the girls. However, in the MC's class, only he and one other person were participating, and someone asked the protagonist if only the two of them were going into the dungeon. That person was Aeun, who was preparing while saying that it was good that only the two of them were going to fight because they wouldn't have to wait for their turn. Our hero asked what she was doing there, and the girl said it was obvious since she was taking the test. Aeun said that the MC didn't need to worry because she wouldn't get in the way, but Junwoo said that a dungeon wouldn't be easy just because the level was low. Our hero told her to stop while he was still being kind and said that this test was designed to make Class E give up from the start. However, Aeun doesn't care about what the protagonist says and insists that she had already told him she would do anything to get into the student council, since anyone who wanted to join the council couldn't fail the exam. And just as the MC was about to say something, someone interrupted, telling the students to pay attention. That person was the shameless teacher, who said that the test wasn't dangerous, but since it was a school exam, they shouldn't let their guard down. He continued, saying that the test would take place inside a low-grade dungeon and that each group could have up to 8 participants. After discussing among themselves, the exam would begin with Class A, while the rest would wait for their turn. As someone entered the room, the teacher announced that everyone should already know him, as he was a member of the student council. That person was the boy from before, who introduced himself as Kim Jong-yen. Hearing this, our hero was surprised and wondered if he had seen this person before. He recognized that name from somewhere. Looking at the protagonist, the shameless teacher mentioned that since there were only 2 students in Class E, Junwoo and Aeun would be moved to Class D. The man from earlier greeted the MC. The boys who had been beaten up by the protagonist looked uneasy, pretending to act tough in front of him. Our heroine pointed out that those boys couldn't even fake confidence. It was too obvious they were putting on an act. Other students were grumbling, saying they were unlucky to be placed on the same team as a special admission student. One boy asked why they had to be in the same group as a special student, and a girl complained that they would have to complete the mission with 2 fewer members. One of the boys who had been beaten by the MC apologized, and just as he was about to say something else, the protagonist cut him off, saying it wasn't a big deal. In the next moment, he asked for information about the dungeon, and someone said they had managed to gather some. A boy bowed to the protagonist and handed him a tablet, saying that he should take a look at the details. Seeing this, everyone was confused. Someone was actually bowing in front of the biggest loser in the school. Then, the next moment, the same boy scoffed, saying that our hero was useless since he couldn't gather any information himself and had to rely on others. A few hours later, in front of a cave, Junmin asked if the last team was ready to enter. Han stated that his freshmen should be able to discover routes and methods to complete the mission. The teacher explained that the test would end once the participants defeated the dungeon boss inside. With a peculiar smile, he asked if the students wanted to know anything else about the exam. Seeing this, the protagonist remained silent, carefully observing what the shameless man was doing. In the next moment, Zhongyan announced that the final team could begin, and so the protagonist's team entered the dungeon. Our hero walked through the dungeon, thinking that this place was pretty ordinary. It had typical cave-type monsters. But suddenly, the MC heard a loud noise and was surprised. The reason was that a massive swarm of rat-like creatures was charging toward the students. Seeing this, they screamed, saying there were too many monsters and that they needed to prepare for battle. The system announced that the students were now authorized to use their abilities. Jungwoo had a different expression on his face as he muttered to himself. He wanted to see what the students' abilities were like. One of the boys launched a gust of wind. The second student activated a sniper-style combat ability, and the last boy used a skill that put him into a berserk state. They were managing to hold off the rat attack. One of the students fired air bullets at the creatures. Thanks to this, they barely managed to defend themselves from the monster's attacks. The MC thought that he had already expected this. They could barely use their abilities and didn't even understand how they worked. And even the other students were the same. They were just swinging their swords aimlessly. Among all of them, there was only one person who managed to stand out. That person was our heroine, who was using a fire-based skill. In the next moment, flames engulfed the monsters, and immediately after, they began shrieking as they were incinerated. The MC noted that Ayan knew how to use her strength. Despite Class E not having proper lessons, she had managed to learn her skills on her own. He admitted that, for a child, she could fight well, but it didn't really matter since she was still just a beginner. The other students were exhausted, wondering if this was really a low-level dungeon, since the monsters just kept coming. Right after saying that, a rat ran toward one of the boys. But in the next moment, our big guy activated the Patelis ring. The system announced that the user was about to use a skill. The protagonist was preparing to flick a stone, and right after that, the monster from before was completely obliterated by our hero. It flew straight into a wall, and seeing this, the boy was confused. The MC told the boy to be more careful and not to make random attacks. But after hearing that, the bastard told our hero to shut up, and the girl said that the MC just wanted to earn points faster. After that, our big guy wondered if they were idiots since they couldn't even understand the situation they were in. One of the boys asked if Junwoo had really managed to do that, and the redhead commented that the dungeon was harder than he had expected. The MC sighed, thinking that they were incredibly weak and didn't even realize that they had almost been wiped out. It would be impossible to continue since they were already exhausted, and it hadn't even been 5 minutes since they entered the dungeon. Because of that, the only person who could be useful was Go-Eun, but it didn't change anything since he couldn't rely on her help. He wanted to leave everyone behind, but he couldn't, as there were people watching, and something felt off about the dungeon. Our hero looked at the shameless guy and asked if he didn't think the dungeon was strange, since there were more monsters than there should be, and they were only at the entrance of the dungeon. There could be something wrong, and it would be better to stop the hunt to assess the situation. Jumpman asked if the MC was good for anything and told him to stop interrupting. As he walked away, he said that the MC was too arrogant and shouldn't overstep his bounds, as he was the supervisor and would be the one to decide what to do. The protagonist shouted that if they continued like this, there would be an accident, and as he was about to say more, the bastard interrupted Junwoo, telling the students to pay attention. He said that if any students were tired and didn't want to continue the exam, they could leave. However, none of the students said anything and were awkwardly silent in response to the man's question. The other shameless ones also remained quiet. Junmin said that if the protagonist was tired, he should quit alone and not drag the other students down with him, and if he caused more trouble, he would be disqualified from the exam immediately. But then, someone placed a hand on our big guy's shoulder and told him not to worry. That person was Jong-hyun, and he said that if the dungeon became dangerous, he would step in. As he walked away from the protagonist, he said that even if he didn't seem strong, he was a member of the student council, so our hero shouldn't worry. Junwoo kept watching the boy as he left, thinking about what was happening. A few minutes later, the extras seemed happy as one of them said they had finally reached the boss room of the dungeon. But suddenly, they stopped celebrating and fell silent. Noticing this, our hero sighed again. Thinking that they were already scared before even seeing the dungeon boss, he walked toward the door, saying that he would open the boss room. Ayin said that they should open it together, and when the MC tried to say that he could do it alone, She didn't care and insisted that she would open it with him. She said that the protagonist was probably laughing inside, thinking that everyone was scared, and stated that she wasn't. Seeing this, our hero looked to the side, trying to play it off. In the next moment, the two of them opened the gates to the dungeon boss's room. But right after looking inside, the protagonist was shocked by what he saw. The reason was that there was a giant monster lying on the ground, with red liquid oozing from its head. The creature had already been taken down, and there was a large amount of liquid spread across the floor. One of the boys asked if the monster on the ground was really the boss, and the woman was also surprised, as everyone wondered if it had already gone to another world. Jimin was also confused as he asked what had happened, and Hyun said that the dungeon hadn't been explored by anyone yet. Our heroine looked at the MC and asked if he knew anything. Our hero said that there had been interference inside the dungeon, and after saying that, he shouted that everyone should retreat immediately. After hearing this, the students were surprised and with fearful expressions asked why they should run. Then the protagonist said that they needed to leave as quickly as possible because an interference had occurred in the dungeon. In the next moment, out of nowhere, a giant shadow covered Jungwoo and our heroine, and when the MC saw it for the first time, he felt true terror. After all, the creature was dozens of times larger than our hero. The students were utterly terrified and started running as soon as they saw the monster's massive size. A dungeon interference occurs when a dungeon boss is eliminated by an even stronger monster that somehow enters the area. This was the rarest event that could happen in a low-grade dungeon, almost impossible. Our heroine had a terrified expression. Meanwhile, our hero was also shaking in his boots. The creature was now right in front of the protagonist, while the system identified it as a three-tailed tiger. The MC thought this was a disaster. This was a green-ranked boss appearing inside a purple-ranked dungeon. The students screamed while running, saying they needed to find the dungeon exit to escape. However, the creature ignored the protagonist and leaped toward the others instead. It landed, destroying everything in its surroundings. The teacher was extremely frightened, while Hyun told his classmates to hide behind him. The system announced that the user's authorization had been granted and rank 6 skills had been activated. He could now use his abilities. In the next moment, glowing lights began to appear inside the dungeon, and they were coming from the boy's arm. Jongyun's ability was Porcupine's Wrath. He called out to the MC, saying that he couldn't defeat a green-ranked enemy alone, and asked if the protagonist would help him. Hearing this, our hero was confused and wondered why the boy wanted his help. Hyun apologized and admitted that he already knew about the protagonist's abilities, since he managed to pass without taking the entrance exam. After hearing this, everyone was shocked, and one of the students wondered if the MC was just like Cha. Our hero was baffled. A few days earlier, a system window had stated that the user's abilities couldn't be measured. Wushik had already expected something like this and said that the MC had technically passed the exam. Our hero responded that he didn't want to stand out. The man explained that this was one of the few matters where he had very little authority, and if the protagonist wanted to stay quiet, the teachers would likely ignore him and wouldn't care about the issue. But in the next moment, he added that when he said it was a matter he could handle freely, he meant that almost no one would pay attention to it. The protagonist muttered to himself that he shouldn't have done that. Back in the dungeon, the protagonist charged forward, saying he would do his best. Hyun thanked him and told our hero not to worry. Right after that, the monster prepared to attack the duo. For some reason, Hyun was confused by what was happening. Getting ready to block the attack, he spotted an opening. Then he fired several mana spikes toward the tiger. After the attack, the monster tried to defend itself from Hyun's strikes. But the boy didn't give the creature any time to react and immediately launched another attack. He pierced 2 spikes into the monster's body. After being hit again, the creature went into a frenzy. One of the students commented that the abilities of a student council member were truly impressive, while a girl said that, compared to them, they were just children. Looking at the MC, some students pointed out that he wasn't doing anything and was just standing around, while another person said that Hyun was doing all the work. A student asked if Hyun was trying to give the MC special treatment, but the girl insisted that was impossible. However, the boy said he had been annoyed with our hero from the start. Thinking that he couldn't let our hero walk away without any effort, he felt he needed to uncover something. The third biggest GO8 of the story kept pressing forward, looking for ways to attack the creature. He was confused, thinking that he had never had such a satisfying battle before, and to him, being able to fight a green-ranked boss this easily felt like someone was handing him the victory on a silver platter. Then he passed by the protagonist and grew even more puzzled. He wondered if our hero was the one making this happen, letting him take all the credit. But soon, Hyun stopped thinking about those things as the tiger was attempting to strike him again. Our hero casually flicked a rock, which struck the monster's body. The tiger was starting to get dizzy. Our big guy was putting it to sleep. The boy finally understood. Every time the creature tried to get close, Our hero used an ability to push it away, and he had already seen this in a manual. The MC was finding weak points to attack, but it was almost impossible to do so unless you knew where the monster would strike. But the most impressive thing was that the protagonist was doing this without anyone noticing, making him wonder what his true identity was. However, it didn't matter much now since he had to defeat the tiger to lead the students to the exit. Right after that, he landed another attack on the monster's head, and with that blow, the creature was completely obliterated by our second big guy. The boy was deep in thought while looking at the eliminated body of the tiger. After witnessing the battle, the other students were terrified as they thought that someone from the student council was truly incredible. They started saying that their superior was the best of all, and that they already expected this from someone in the council. The shameless one was laughing while thinking that he had believed the incident from 2 years ago would repeat, but now it seemed like things would turn out fine. And since Junwoo had probably received an evaluation exemption without reason, this could be used as grounds to expel him from the academy. But the protagonist said that everyone should wait because the monster was still alive. It would be dangerous to stay there, so they all needed to leave. But out of nowhere, someone shouted, telling the protagonist to pay attention. That person was the guy from before, and he said that he knew our hero only said that to earn points. Then he jumped in front of the creature. The bastard declared that he wouldn't let Junwoo take advantage of this and would land the final blow himself. Fortunately, in the next moment, the tiger opened its eyes and lunged at the extra, whom I sincerely hope gets eliminated. The protagonist thought that this guy was truly an idiot for doing something like that. But to my sadness, and that of the readers, the second greatest Gyo8 stepped in front of the extra. And right after that, his arm was severed from his body, making me question, was this really necessary, author? After that, the boy spat out a lot of red liquid. The one responsible for this was in shock over what had happened. All the students, along with the professor, were horrified. The boy lay on the ground as everyone asked if he was still alive. Then Junmin said they had to run, and the students asked if he would be okay, but the man told them to just focus on running. Our heroine was extremely frightened, wondering what she could do to help, given that a student council member had been defeated in a single strike. However, the monster was already standing right in front of her. The girl thought she just needed to stay calm since the tiger was afraid of fire, which was one of her abilities, but as she tried to attack, she couldn't. She was too scared to do anything. She realized that she couldn't move because her body was trembling. She couldn't do anything. Immediately after, the creature charged toward our heroine, but then the system announced that the user had activated explosive flow, and in the next moment, a fist shot toward the monster. That person was our hero, who landed a blow on the creature's body, sending it flying. Seeing this, the girl was shocked and questioned if she was really witnessing our hero defeat the creature with a single punch. After the punch that our hero landed, the tiger flew far away. In the next moment, the protagonist left the area. The extra from earlier was crying at the spot where our Gyo8 had fallen. And to be honest, I'm not as mad at him now since he doesn't seem like a bad person, but in the next moment, someone grabbed him by the collar. That person was our hero, who told the extra to stop fooling around and take him somewhere else if he didn't want to end up in another world. The protagonist called the big guy and told him to help him while the rest should stay hidden. Our hero was preparing for battle, thinking that he had made a mistake. He shouldn't have stayed hidden and could have ended this from the start. Now the creature was roaring in the protagonist's face. In the next moment, it tried to strike our hero, but without difficulty, the Gyo8 dodged. After that, the tiger began pulling sharp objects from its body. It attacked the MC with something resembling a spear, but he managed to evade it while the system announced that weapon capacity had been activated. With flow activated, the protagonist landed another punch on the creature. This time, I think the monster is truly defeated, because there's just no way. And I really believe it now because our hero is already activating another ability. Actually, it was the same skill, but now he unleashed multiple attacks at once. The bystanders were surprised since the protagonist was managing to defeat the tiger. Even our waifu was looking at her future husband. The shameless guy was also confused since the protagonist was beating the hell out of the tiger, thinking that the MC had done nothing before, and now he was a completely different person. The guy got pissed, wondering if the protagonist had really passed without taking the exam. And the way he was fighting, the protagonist was above the veterans and was even using an ancient weapon. Then he shouted that it was very dangerous to use an ancient supernatural weapon. But our hero didn't care and kept advancing, thinking that it was obvious he already knew that, and the professor was probably talking about the penalty, since every ancient weapon had one. The activation effects change, and in some cases, they even eliminate the user, but the reason he kept using them was that they were incredibly strong. The bracelet was easy to use and had the highest power without a penalty, but still, all the user could do was use the abilities of the monster that serve as its core. On the other hand, a supernatural weapon increased the monster's power and changed its form so the hunter could use it, making it stronger. The MC was thinking that the new generation of hunters had grown weaker, and even if things were fine now, the monsters would only get stronger in the future. But in the next moment, the tiger appeared behind the protagonist out of nowhere, and our heroine said that her future husband should look behind him. The bastard tried to land an attack on our hero, but the Go-8 dodged it without any difficulty. The system announced that the user had activated the flow attack, and upon seeing this, the creature became frightened. The protagonist was spinning in midair, and right after that, he was trying to land a punch on the tiger. The hit was so strong that the monster even closed one of its eyes after being struck by the explosive attack. The bystanders and our heroine were also affected by the attack. Smoke rises, smoke falls, and the protagonist thought that the penalty of the patellus ring was to devour the user's fear. However, the bastard still managed to open his eye again, even after being wrecked by the protagonist, and the system announced that the penalty was being activated. Patellus was a green-class monster that the protagonist had hunted in the past, and if someone felt fear of it, the creature would become so powerful that it was impossible to defeat. The ring was created from Patellus's core, and its penalty was that the first to feel fear would be eliminated. The rule being that the first to lose their will would take a trip through the sky. The MC was heading toward the students while asking if Hyun was okay, and the big guy said he had managed to stop the red liquid from coming out. The MC thought that his companion was still breathing, and they needed to act fast since he had lost a lot of red liquid. The protagonist asked for the radio and said that there was probably a control center, so they should inform the higher-ups. The professor was pulling the item out of his pocket, and when he handed it to the protagonist, he didn't even think and just grabbed the radio. The protagonist turned on the radio and said they had cleared the dungeon and there were some casualties. And since there was an interference, the dungeon had changed from purple to green, and the injured one had a severe wound. Then out of nowhere, he spoke a code. Our hero said he was leaving the dungeon and that they should send a rescue team as soon as possible. The MC was giving Hyun's information, but Jungmin wondered how an E-rank student knew about injury codes and the reporting system. Jungmin asked what Jungwoo's true identity was, since he was supposedly just an inexperienced young man. But the protagonist didn't answer, and the guy was already pissed, shouting to ask if the boy hadn't heard him. The moment he was about to say something else, he took a punch straight to the mouth. Obviously, the one who threw the punch was the protagonist. The guy was tearing up while the protagonist said that a supervisor should be able to assess a situation, but the guy was still angry and wanted to argue with him. But that's when the big boss laid down the law and said that if the extra said one more word, he'd send him to Brazil. After that, the professor fell silent and said nothing else. And a few minutes later, outside the dungeon, the students were leaving. Our hero had a sad look as he observed his companion's condition. Woo-shik asked if the protagonist was okay. He then mentioned that his friend couldn't hold back, and the MC replied that thanks to that, no one was eliminated. The second greatest Go-8 said that everyone would soon know about him, and that it wouldn't take long for Seokdu to find out as well. At that moment, our protagonist stopped being slow and revealed that a teacher from the school had tried to get rid of him, and a 19-year-old boy had lost his arm. As it should have been from the beginning, the MC asked his friend if he really thought these things made sense. After seeing the protagonist's expression, Woo-shik started trembling. Our hero stated that if something like this happened again, he would not let it slide. As he walked away, the MC said that his friend wouldn't like seeing him in his active days again. A few hours later, the shameless teacher was in Woo-shik's office. He said there had been issues with the test and that it was Cha who had forced them to switch to a practical exam. The man explained that the test was implemented to address the inequality between the other classes and Class E, insisting that there was no connection between that decision and a particular incident. The director stated that even in a situation like this, Jungmin kept making excuses. He then shouted, asking if Jungmin really didn't know that the test had been designed to expel our guy from school. The shameless teacher was shocked, thinking that he hadn't expected Woo-shik to already know this. He wondered if there was someone more influential than Minister Myunjin, but then dismissed the idea, believing it was impossible since he didn't know anyone like that. Trying to regain his composure, he stated that there was nothing wrong with the test and that no one had been forced to participate in the subjugation. As he was about to make up more nonsense, the GOAT interrupted, saying that the problem was the sudden shift to a practical test. Since a score of 60 stars was required to pass, and Jungmin already knew that the special students had no chance, the situation was unfair. The man pointed out that the MC was not an ordinary student as he didn't need to take the exam yet still achieved the best result in the test. He then claimed that the accident in the dungeon was a disaster known as dungeon interference, and in one of his top 10 biggest realizations, he stated that the test had also been approved by Woo-shik. At that moment, the GO8 was left speechless because he had, in fact, approved it. Woo-shik gave up on continuing the discussion, saying he understood and instructing the teacher to prepare the report since they would analyze the footage before deciding what to do. After that, the shameless teacher started leaving the director's office with a smile on his face. But at that moment, he froze as Woo-shik told him he wanted to make one thing clear. He wasn't afraid of Minister Moonjin at all, because the only person he had ever feared in this world was Junwoo from 40 years ago. The man asked what the GO8 meant by that, and Woo-shik warned him that if something like this happened again, there would be nothing he could do to help Junmin. Hearing that, the teacher was filled with fear. Outside the academy president's office, the shameless teacher sighed. The next moment he called the minister, saying that the matter wouldn't leak. Moonjin responded that fortunately, Jonghyun's injury wasn't fatal, so they wouldn't blame Junmin for the incident. And since Hyunwon was never an official candidate to begin with and was responsible for getting Professor Che expelled, he should be grateful that he wasn't seriously injured. The teacher apologized, admitting that he hadn't expected our hero's abilities to be that high. The minister then asked if the protagonist truly had the skills to justify his admission. Just as the shameless teacher was about to respond, Moonjin cut him off, saying he would get straight to the point. As a member of the Parents' Association, he believed that the candidates for the council had already been decided and asked for Junmin's opinion. Fearful, the shameless teacher agreed, saying he also thought that way, to which the minister responded that it was great. He then added that Cha had worked hard and shouldn't be discouraged, suggesting they could have lunch together sometime. After that, the minister ended the call, and the shameless teacher sighed. He wondered how a student could be so powerful since our guy was beyond the level of an ordinary student and was even stronger than veteran hunters. But he decided that he couldn't waste this opportunity. He just needed to take down Junwoo, no matter what it took. Elsewhere, someone told the protagonist that it was going to hurt quite a bit, but he didn't care at all. But in the next moment, our big guy started screaming because a doctor was pressing a cotton swab on his arm. The nurse said it was already done and that he shouldn't lie down until it dried, along with a few other things. Our heroine said that her future husband was acting like a baby and didn't even seem like he had just taken down a green rank boss, and the MC told her to shut up. He wondered if the pain was because he hadn't used a supernatural weapon in a long time and told himself that things weren't like before. Our hero said that she kept showing up, and it annoyed him, and the girl said she would never come again if he promised to help her. The MC asked if she was seriously still trying to join the council and questioned how many times he would have to refuse. He said that whether she got into the council or not wouldn't change anything for him. Out of nowhere, someone said that getting into the student council wouldn't be easy at all. Ayan was surprised and said she had heard that he had been transferred to our hero's room. That person was the third biggest GOAT in the story, and the MC asked how he was feeling. The boy said he was fine, but his wounds hurt a lot. Our hero asked if his companion had heard that the arrogant guy had given up. Hyun said he had heard about it right after the practical exam. The protagonist said that when someone saves your life, the least you can do is show up and say thanks, but the guy still ran away. Hyun said it didn't matter since they had survived. The protagonist asked if his companion wasn't being too optimistic since his arm was no longer there. After hearing that, the boy was left speechless, and honestly, I have to say, this is the biggest waste of an amazing character I've seen this year. The GO said that his father always told him that as long as he wasn't eliminated, he could always overcome the greatest challenges, and he added that since he hadn't been sent to Brazil, everything would work out in the end. The MC thought that at first he found the boy very suspicious, but he had sacrificed his arm to save someone reckless, and even 40 years ago, people like that were very rare, and he thought it had been a long time since he had heard that phrase. Completely ruining the mood, our heroine asked why the boy said it was difficult to get into the council. The boy said he had heard that Ayan wanted to join the council, but that it would probably be very difficult. She asked if it was because she was in Class E, but the GO8 laughed and said it wasn't that at all, and he asked if our couple had ever heard of the Parents' Association. After hearing that, both were surprised. The girl said that from the way Hyun spoke, this group didn't seem normal, and he replied that she was exactly right. There were 5 first-year members in the Parents' Association, and those parents had 5 children in total, and the number of council members per grade was also 5. He asked if the 2 of them understood what he was saying, and our heroine was shocked. Continuing, he said it was a group of influential parents who had already decided to place their children into the council. Feeling a bit awkward, Ayan asked if he had also gotten in that way, but the boy said no, he had only managed to after a reserved spot opened up. The protagonist asked if someone had to be approved to enter, and if that didn't happen, they would just get rid of another person. After Hyun didn't answer, the MC asked what had happened to the students who were eliminated during the process. After hearing that, our heroine was surprised, wondering if people were really eliminated because of this. The GO8 asked if he really needed to answer something like that, and looking at our heroine, he said that it was strange for a senior to say this, but that it would be better if she gave up on joining the council. But she said she wouldn't do that and asked if he wanted her to give up without even trying since someone could get hurt because of the Parents' Association. And looking at the protagonist, she asked if he didn't think this situation was ridiculous and needed to be fixed. The NC thought that the corruption within the school was putting students in danger, and of course he wanted to intervene, but the issue of Gigantiana's return was more important. And he said that he had already stated this before, but would repeat it. Nothing would be a problem until he found Cha. And right after that, the boy said that she had arrived just in time. And guys, our second heroine, or maybe the main heroine, appears behind the protagonist. Eunchae started walking toward where the protagonist was. Our hero was surprised, thinking that he couldn't believe things were suddenly falling into place out of nowhere. Jungwoo stood up with a big smile on his face and went to greet his girlfriend. He said it had been a while since they last saw each other, but at that moment, our guy was completely ignored by the brunette, who walked straight past him toward our heroine. Aeon said that her sister had already tried several times to convince her to stop attending the academy, and she asked what Eunchae was planning to do now, since she was already enrolled and studying there. However, Eunchae didn't respond and simply stared at her sister. And guys, we got a full-on waifu war happening right in front of us, while our two goats watched the scene awkwardly. The protagonist thought that he didn't know what had happened between them, but just by looking, it seemed serious. And he wondered if the reason Aeon wanted to join the council was to surpass Eunchae or something similar. Our heroine said that since there was nothing else to do, she was going to leave. And when the MC tried to say something, she cut him off, saying that he was in an even worse situation. For the first time during this encounter, Eunchae finally spoke, asking if her sister had gotten hurt. Aeon looked a bit surprised, and as she walked away, she said it was too late for her sister to pretend to care about that now. Trying to lighten the mood, Hyun thanked her friend for coming and asked if the protagonist and Eunchae already knew each other. And while the two stared at each other, he commented that their first impression of each other probably wasn't great, thinking that he couldn't stay there any longer or he would just get in the way of their date. The guy started leaving, saying he had some things to take care of. The MC said that he wanted to talk to Eunchae, so the two of them started leaving the room together. Seeing this, Hyun felt even more awkward about the bizarre situation. Elsewhere in the hospital corridor, Eunchae asked what problem our hero had with her. The protagonist thought that he hadn't prepared for this conversation back when they first met, and he wondered if he should get straight to the point, but figured it would be better to try getting closer by saying he was a fan, only to realize that wouldn't work because they wouldn't become friends that way. The girl said she had heard that the MC participated in the subjugation during a practical exam, but when the protagonist tried to say that he didn't do anything and that Hyun handled everything, she interrupted, saying that his friend couldn't have done that alone. And putting some weight on her words, she told the MC that it was a panic-inducing situation, but a first-year student managed to handle it, and that the advice he gave earlier wasn't something an amateur would say. Our hero was about to come up with another excuse, but in the next moment he simply said that she was being way too confident. And in a playful interaction, Eunchae asked if he was seriously trying to provoke her right now. Jungwoo replied that obviously he wasn't, he just wanted to know if they would get along. And trying to wrap up the conversation, she asked if he was planning to join the council or something like that. She said that at the moment, he was probably just trying to make connections, but he didn't need to, since his skills were already impressive. The protagonist said he had no intention of joining the student council, but once again, she cut him off, saying she had one last thing to say. And now, dropping the playful tone, she told him that no matter what he did to get into the council, the only thing he should never do was involve her sister in it. The protagonist commented that the two sisters were really alike. Hearing that, Eunchae looked confused. Continuing, he said that the only one who wanted to join the council was Aeon, because he didn't care about it at all, and that he was only trying to get closer to her because he had things to settle with Seokdu. And for some unknown reason, completely out of nowhere, she elbowed the protagonist in the neck and slammed him against the wall. She shouted, asking if her sister had asked him for anything, and when our hero tried to say something, she demanded that he answer. She asked again whether Aeon had asked for help to get into the council, or if she had asked for help with revenge. Our hero was already getting pissed off and prepared to fight back, but in reality, it wasn't anything that serious. He simply tried to push her away, surprising the girl. Right after that, she quickly regained her composure, and she tried to land a kick on the protagonist. But this time, he struggled to defend against her attack. Right after, he dodged another attack while thinking that she was really skilled with her strikes. The two stared at each other for a moment before attacking again. He thought that this encounter was completely different from the last time since this level was advanced even for dungeon management teams. But before he could finish his thoughts, our heroine was already going in for another attack. While dodging, he thought that he had really underestimated Eunchae since she was incredibly fast. He wondered why she had performed such a mediocre subjugation in the middle of the street when her skills were clearly above average. And in the next moment, when she attacked again, our hero dodged once more and was preparing to counterattack. But actually, that wasn't it at all. He just grabbed a bandage that was on his arm, and out of nowhere, he threw it at her face. But it worked since our heroine was caught off guard, giving our hero enough time to grab her by the neck. As he pinned her against the wall, She asked if Junwoo's last move wasn't against the rules. The protagonist questioned whether there were even rules at the school they attended, and the girl said that for a special student, he had adapted really fast. Guys, I don't know if it's just me, but did anyone else notice that this girl has the face of a dude? The protagonist said that she was better than he had expected and asked what had happened during the last subjugation. She said that the field was very different from what he imagined. It wasn't about how a subjugation was done, but rather about how much he could entertain the crowd, and it seemed that this answer didn't make our hero very happy since he looked visibly irritated. She asked what he wanted to talk to her about, and the protagonist said it wasn't anything important. He just needed to speak with Unche's grandfather. He only wanted her to retrieve some weapons from headquarters, and upon hearing this, the girl looked confused. She said it was impossible for her to take weapons from that place. Junwoo said he had heard that they were just for display, and that since Seokdu was the director of the support house, he could get some of them. Unchi said that convincing her grandfather was impossible, no matter what the request was. Just as the MC was about to ask something else, Awon appeared, calling out to our hero. Still holding on to the girl's shoulder, the nurse told the protagonist that he couldn't be fighting there. In the next moment, our heroine slapped the protagonist's hand away, and after fighting him, she simply walked off. Our hero said that he was looking forward to seeing her again, but the girl said she never wanted to see him in front of her again. And acting like a true protagonist, he said that would be difficult, since she was Seokdu's granddaughter. A few minutes later, the protagonist returned to his room. Hyun asked how the conversation with Cha had gone, and the MC said it hadn't gone well. The boy said he had already expected that. The protagonist asked if her relationship with her grandfather wasn't good, and seeing this, Hyun looked a bit surprised. He said that it wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It was more like a relationship between coworkers. After hearing that, the protagonist was surprised and asked if they really didn't have a family-like relationship. The boy confirmed that was exactly the case. Hyun asked what the MC had talked about with her, and our hero said that he had asked Che to retrieve something, but she had said it wasn't possible. The boy said that made sense since his friend had never asked her grandfather for anything before. Just looking at him was already scary. The MC asked what Hyun meant by that. He responded that it wasn't something he could say in that place, and laughing, he said it was the protagonist's fault since making that kind of request didn't make any sense. Junwoo asked if he should just give her money, and at that moment, Hyun laughed even more, saying that there was only one thing that would catch her interest, and our hero asked what it was. The boy said that for the protagonist to get a favor from Unche, he would have to make Aeon give up on joining the council. He said he didn't know the reason for that, but he was sure that his friend didn't like the fact that her sister was attending the academy. Our MC thought that made sense since, during his fight with her, the girl had mentioned something about it. Hyun said that if our hero tried to convince Aeon to give up, they might be able to get what they wanted, but Junwoo told Hyun to stay quiet. The reason for that was because someone was passing by where they were. A few hours later, in another place, our heroine was sitting on a bench in a plaza. The person who had passed by the room earlier was her, as she was now recalling what she had overheard in the conversation between the protagonist and Hyun. She thought about how she had done everything to become a member of the council just to get her revenge on Seokdu. And with her current abilities, she wouldn't be able to join the council. Maybe she wouldn't even be able to graduate from the academy. That was why she needed the MC's help. Since he was a first-year student who was far stronger than he should be, if she had his support, she would be able to graduate. She told herself that now she had no chance of getting help from our hero, but she convinced herself that it didn't matter. After all, things had always been this way, and this time, she would just have to handle everything on her own again. But suddenly, someone arrived at the place where she was sitting. That person was the protagonist, who immediately asked why she had acted so pathetically. Our hero asked if she wasn't going home since it was already getting late, and the girl replied that she was on her way. The MC said he had a question for her. He then asked if she was thinking about giving up. Hearing this, Aeon was slightly startled. She asked why our hero thought she would give up, and he said he already knew she would say that. The protagonist smiled because, up until now, he hadn't seen this moment happen in the story. In the next moment, he said that he had fought against Cha. Hearing this, our heroine was once again surprised. She asked what he was talking about, and the MC responded that he really had fought against her, and that Yunche was even more powerful than he had expected. That was why things had gotten complicated, since the two of them didn't get along and ended up fighting again. Because of that, he was planning to change the way he handled things. He said he would stop trying to ask nicely, and would just threaten Unche instead. After hearing this, the girl was confused. She commented that the MC was exactly what she expected, too aggressive. She asked if he was joking, but the MC said he was looking for her weak spot. Aeon questioned what kind of weakness her sister could possibly have. Pointing at our heroine, the protagonist said that Yunchi's weakness was her own sister. He told Yun that she needed to pay attention. He explained that Che was the leader of the council, a top-tier hunter, and on top of that, Her grandfather was the head of the association. Then he asked why someone so powerful would care about someone like Yun, because no matter how hard our heroine worked, she would never reach Unche's level. And there was a reason Yun wasn't in the Hunter Academy. If she were, it would affect Che's future career. Or maybe she was afraid that Yun could take her place. After hearing this, the girl spit out the juice she was drinking. She said she knew her own abilities, and what the protagonist was saying didn't make any sense. But the MC told her that she just needed to make it make sense. Hearing this, our heroine was confused about what exactly the protagonist meant. Our hero then said that he would help her. That way, she would be able to face Unche and eventually find her weakness. After hearing this, the future wife of our guy was even more shocked by what she had just heard. He asked if she wasn't confident. After hearing that, the girl pulled herself together while thinking about something that we don't know just yet. In the next moment, she shouted that she would make it happen and surpass her sister. Our hero thought that this was how things should have been from the start. He stood up from the bench and said that was enough for now. The conversation was over, saying that they didn't have much time and starting tomorrow, they would begin training, since the goal was for her to become a candidate for the council before the second semester. And just as she was about to ask something, he told her that was exactly it, because the Parents' Association or anything else like it had to be eliminated. And as he walked away, he asked if she understood. But before the protagonist could leave, the girl called out to him again. With tears streaming down her face, she said she wouldn't forget this favor and thanked him. Elsewhere, at a sushi restaurant, someone was asking if our third Gyoitu was okay. Someone said they had been worried because the boy had become confident after entering Class A. Another person said this was something to celebrate since Jian was happy to have passed. In the next moment, someone arrived at the entrance of the place where those people were gathered, and the one who arrived was the shameless professor, who apologized for being late. After that, everyone recognized him. Someone said they had heard there was an accident during the exam and asked if the professor was alright, and the man said that nothing bad had happened. The people in this meeting were part of the first-year Parents' Association, and Junmin said they could now discuss the main topic of the gathering. They needed to prepare for the admission period since the semester was ending. That's why they would begin by reviewing the documents, and after analyzing the papers, they were to sign them. He handed them to Taeyang's father, whose name was Jung-hoon. Then he continued distributing a stack of papers to several other people who were considered important in the industry, until he reached the last person, Jusok's father, Minister Mingjin, who had been a nuisance since the beginning of the story. The professor said they could take their time signing the documents and asked if they had any questions. Jung said he had a question about the practical exam that took place a few days ago because he had heard that a special student had cleared it alone, and he asked if there was any chance that the boy would try to run for the council. After hearing this, everyone was surprised. The shameless professor said that our hero had shown no interest and that there was no possibility of their children not getting in, so they should be at ease. He added that, to be honest, it was very unlikely that our big guy would apply. After hearing that, the minister said he had a question. He asked if the professor had a way to handle this matter in case his assumption was wrong. Junmin said that was obvious and that they shouldn't worry because he would do everything to make their plan work. And with a smile, he said he would ensure that each of their children got into the student council. The next day, at the Hunter Academy, the protagonist was entering his classroom, and in the next moment, someone shouted that he had finally arrived. Several students rushed toward our big guy, bombarding him with endless questions. Our hero was completely overwhelmed since they wouldn't stop asking how he had managed to subjugate the dungeon. The protagonist wondered how he had ended up in this situation. The reason for this was a poster on the wall announcing that he had ranked first in the test. He thought that was insane. The students kept asking him countless questions and didn't stop, even after several minutes. Our big guy activated his aura and told everyone to get out of his way since he didn't know any of them. At that moment, the extras realized that they were no longer dealing with the old Junwoo. In the next moment, our hero started heading to his seat, and our heroine spotted him. The protagonist told the girl that he hadn't expected the professor to give him a perfect score, and she responded that they wouldn't alter the results, which was why they had revealed the true score. Our hero thought that at least the stars weren't manipulated. Junwoo asked if our heroine was following the instructions he had given her. She replied that she was and asked how long she would need to continue physical training. The MC said that it didn't matter if she had good weapons. If she lacked strength, it was useless. The girl said she understood that, but even so, our hero needed to prepare since the final exams were approaching. The protagonist asked if it was another dungeon. Ayan replied that it would be a written test and a sparring match, and our hero thought that the academy's exams were strange and wondered why students had to fight each other. But he said that was actually better since the girl only needed to beat one person. She asked who that would be. The protagonist said it was obvious. She only needed to defeat Jusok because he was undoubtedly a candidate for the council. Since his father was the minister, and after the trouble he had caused with the boy, the professor had tried to fail him. And this kind of chaos wouldn't be possible without the Parents' Association. Then he said that they were told the council members were selected based on their exam results, and there was a chance he wouldn't make it to the first round. And as long as she could defeat the boy, she could pass the first phase without any problems. After hearing that, the girl started thinking. Once again, the protagonist asked if she wasn't confident. She then said she would try, and the MC asked if she was just going to try. The girl corrected herself and said she would make it happen. The protagonist said that was great because, starting the next day, they would train martial arts, and if she had time, she could invite her friends. In the next moment, the girl had a different expression and said that she didn't have any friends. After hearing that, the protagonist looked at her with a pitying expression. Our girl asked why he was looking at her like that when he also had no friends. The MC asked why she thought that. He said that Wushik was a friend and then tried to remember other names, but he couldn't come up with even one more. And suddenly, he recalled someone saying something to him, but he couldn't remember exactly what it was. After that memory surfaced, the protagonist went silent. Aeon asked what was wrong and if there was a problem. With an indifferent expression, Junwoo said it was nothing, he was just distracted. At the hospital where our hero had been earlier, Hyun was thinking about how boring it was there, but having his classmates around hadn't been so bad. He thought about watching something on YouTube. The boy reached for his phone, but then he noticed that his arm was missing. And after realizing that, a sad expression appeared on his face. In the next moment, someone entered the room, calling our Go8's son, and as soon as that person arrived, the boy's mood lifted. He then asked if his father hadn't gone to work. The man said he had talked to the team leader and was given time off. He asked if his son was feeling better, and the boy said he wasn't in pain. The man said that his father had also lost an arm during a subjugation, but never gave up on his dream, and because of that, he became an even stronger hunter. And as long as his son kept training, his left arm would find a way to improve every day. Pulling something out of his shirt, the man said he had discovered something. He claimed he could prove that the Parents' Association was involved in the accident that happened 2 years ago. Hyun asked if his father was still thinking about that. The boy's father asked if the test had been planned, but then suddenly changed. Hearing that, Hyun went silent. And just as the man was about to continue speaking, the boy shouted at his father, telling him that he should stop thinking about it because he had been fired for investigating it. And because of that, they had lost everything they had. He questioned what his father was still trying to do after all this time. Guys, for the first time, I think our boy Hyun might have crossed the line a bit. His father couldn't even say anything back. The boy said that his father should accept that no matter how much he investigated, he would never take down the Parents' Association, and that he would also never be able to hunt again. And when the man tried to say something else, Hyun cut him off, saying he didn't want to hear any more stories about his grandfather, because no one would believe in something that happened 40 years ago. And guys, could our boy actually be Hyun's grandfather? I don't think so, but maybe. After the boy left the room, his father sat on the bed, thinking about what he should do. Elsewhere, our hero was asking if his underlings had found anything new. The chubby one said there was nothing suspicious in classes C and D. Hearing that, the protagonist asked about the rest. The boy said that it was a bit weird to ask people from classes A and B. The MC thought that he was trying to figure out who wanted to join the council, but these guys weren't enough for that kind of job. Our boy told them they had done a good job, so they would get a reward. Seeing this, the guys said it wasn't necessary. The protagonist told them that when an adult offered payment, kids should just accept it and say thank you. Handing them the money, our hero said they should just take it because he was starting to get irritated. The chubby one said there was only 1,001 in there. The MC told them they didn't need to be embarrassed since they could at least buy a snack with it. As they walked away, they thought that the money wasn't enough to buy anything, and the protagonist commented that they really were good lackeys. Seeing the boys, he remembered when he was new and how even 1,001 made him feel like he owned the world. But that didn't matter now because he needed to focus on what had to be done, training Aen to defeat Jusok. As for the written exam, he could only hope she studied since the most important part was the fight. Jusok's skills were bad, but they still had to prepare since they didn't know what the association might do. The problem was that there wasn't a good place to train Yun, and asking Wushik for help would attract too much attention. Out of nowhere, someone called out to our hero. That person was our third biggest goat, who said he was happy to see his friend again. The MC asked if Hyun had already been discharged, and the boy said he was only at school to handle some paperwork in the office. Saying that he had heard our hero was going to help Aeon, he asked how things were progressing. After explaining everything that had happened, the boy said he understood the situation. He mentioned that if Class E wanted to use the academy, there were restrictions, and the protagonist said that was exactly what he was worried about. He then asked if his friend really planned to fight against the association, and our hero said it was obvious. The MC wanted to know why his friend was asking. The boy said it wouldn't be easy, and that he might even be risking his life. The MC laughed and said that they had all managed to get through this together, so they would find a way again. Gen admitted that the protagonist was right. In some way, they had survived the dungeon, and he recalled the things that had happened inside as it was collapsing. Even the moment when he had put himself in front of the arrogant boy to save him. After remembering all that, the GO8 felt sad again about what had happened, and he said he wondered what would have happened if the MC had been in the accident 2 years ago. Hearing that, our boy was confused, but in the next moment, Hyun said it was nothing and mentioned that he could find a training location for our hero, since he could take his friend to the Student Council's training academy. Inside the council's office, the shameless professor said he was going to be honest, and looking at the boy standing before him, he stated that Jusuk was the person in the most danger at that moment. Hearing this, the boy asked what his professor meant, and Jungmin said that the MC might want to enter the council. After hearing that, the extra was shocked, and to make things even more intense, the professor said that our hero had passed without even taking the evaluation. And that wasn't all. He had even managed to defeat a green rank monster alone. He had seen it with his own eyes, so he had no doubts. After hearing that, the extra was even more terrified. Shaking with fear, he said that his spot on the council was secured because his father had helped him. The professor told him that there was a limit to how much parents could interfere with the school. Jungmin kept throwing facts at the boy while the extra kept insisting that the professor just needed to stop him. The man said that Jusuk couldn't afford to lose in grades. The boy was thinking about how, when he first entered the school, the man in front of him had promised he would get him into the council. Jungmin told his student not to be discouraged because he had the test's answer key. He just needed to memorize it and make sure no one found out, since the most important thing at that moment was the fight. And after remembering how he got completely wrecked by the protagonist, he admitted that he didn't think he could win. But the shameless professor said he had a plan. He reached into his shirt pocket to pull something out. What he took out was a bracelet similar to the one Jusuk had used in the fight against our hero. Jungmin said it was an unregistered bracelet that wasn't recorded in the association and was of B rank. After seeing it, the boy was shocked. He said that almost everyone in the school was D rank, and then he realized just how good the item was. The shameless professor said that the minimum rank for hunters was B, so his student should use it in the fight. With a smirk on his face, the bastard said it was completely overpowered, like using cheats in a game. Laughing, he asked where Jungmin had gotten that, and the professor said it was from his father. The extra commented that he had heard Jungmin's father was part of the subjugation team. Trying to change the subject, Jungmin said that was a long time ago. He then mentioned that he had called a senior to help his student get used to his new ability. In the next moment, someone appeared at the door, and I was absolutely sure it was Inchud. Even before reading ahead, after seeing who was there, the boy was shocked, saying that it should have been impossible. And the reason for that was because it really was our second heroine who had appeared. The boy said it was incredible because, with her help, there was no way he could lose. The man then told him to listen to all of her orders because he had made a special request. Thinking that he never imagined she would agree, he figured the reason must have been that she didn't like the MC. Then he told them they could talk about the training. Placing a hand on our heroine's shoulder, the shameless man told her to take good care of her junior. The girl responded that she would. Somewhere else, inside the school's academy, our hero was getting AN fighting advice while sparring with her. But our heroine was getting completely dominated by the protagonist, unable to fight back. She then called for a break, saying she couldn't keep up with him anymore. The girl pointed out that they were just practicing and asked if he wasn't going too hard on her. Our hero said they needed to train properly. Ayan then said that if they were going to go all out, the MC should teach her how to use abilities because everyone used them in fights and she couldn't just rely on her fists. Jungwoo sighed and said it would be easier to show than to explain. Then he told her to take off her gloves and use her abilities against him from that moment on. She looked confused, but the MC told her to think of it as a real fight and to try attacking him seriously. He then asked if she really thought she could take him down with just one punch. Ayan asked if he was crazy, saying that she wouldn't use her ability on someone unarmed. Jungwoo replied that if she kept complaining, he would just stop the training. In the next moment, she activated her bracelet and the system confirmed that her rank D abilities had been approved. Activating her flame magic, she said she wouldn't care if he got hurt. And in the next moment, she charged toward the protagonist with magic in her hands. She then fired her fire ability at our hero, but he dodged it effortlessly. In the very next instant, he was already standing right in front of her. The protagonist grabbed the girl's arms, and then he delivered a punch to her body, sending her flying. After that, she crashed into the ropes of the ring. The protagonist told her to get up and try attacking him again. In the next moment, our heroine activated her flame abilities once more, but this time, she activated her second ranking skill, Right after, she started running toward our hero again. She attempted to land a hit on the protagonist while he noticed that she had switched to close combat. As he dodged, he thought to himself that it was a good attempt, but our hero decided to stop dodging and instead landed a punch straight into her stomach. Ayan was knocked down again. The MC said that she was probably wondering why she couldn't land a hit on him, even though her ability had a greater range, and he explained that the reason was that an ability had to be used in sync with her movements, but when she used her ability, she was only thinking about how to use the next one. Ayanam looked confused and asked if that wasn't normal. The protagonist said no, because that would create a gap between her skills. Instead of thinking about how to use an ability, she needed to focus on how to attack. The girl said she didn't understand what he was trying to tell her. With a smile, the protagonist said that if that was the case, she would just have to learn the hard way. As he tried to land a punch on her, the MC continued giving tips on how to defend and counterattack her opponents. He explained that the moment she found an opening, she could use the full force of her ability. While thinking to himself, he admitted that he had expected the girl to give up quickly, but she had courage. He wondered how long she would be able to hold out. In the next moment, our heroine seemed to have an epiphany as she suddenly realized something. And for the first time, the girl dodged one of our hero's attacks. She was already preparing to counterattack as she lifted her leg. And that's exactly what she did. She landed a powerful kick to our hero's stomach. After that, even the protagonist staggered to the side and almost fell to the ground. Our heroine activated a third-rank skill and charged toward our hero once again. But for some reason, the protagonist jumped, and the two stood face to face, staring into each other's eyes. After seeing that, our heroine became confused and got distracted. At that moment, our hero landed a strike on her chin. The girl became dizzy from the hit she received, and in the next moment, she was taken down. The MC said that in a fight, one should always look for openings in their opponent, and if it was just about skills or weapons, she wouldn't be able to exploit those openings with a one-sided approach. He asked if she now understood why basic techniques were important, but he thought that she really wanted to take him out, as she had thrown an elbow strike purely out of reflex without even realizing it. Our heroine said that she was still curious about who the protagonist really was. He asked why she was suddenly bringing that up, and she said it didn't make any sense since they were the same age. Looking at the protagonist, she was about to say something but stopped midway. After that, even our big guy got a little scared, thinking she might have figured out he was a reincarnator. She questioned whether her future husband was actually a secret agent trained since childhood, and the MC told her to stop talking nonsense. The Gyo8 entered the academy and said he didn't expect to see them there so early. The protagonist and our heroine greeted Ken, and he asked if they were doing well since it had been a while since they last used the academy. The girl said she was fine, and that it was enough. He said that he always fought his father in the ring, even though he lost most of the time. Our hero asked what he planned to do from now on, and Hyun asked why the MC was bringing that up out of nowhere. He said that even if he left the council, he still had to graduate and had been thinking a lot about that in recent days. His whole life, he had thought about becoming a hunter, but that was out of the question now since he had lost an important part of himself. After hearing that, the protagonist fell silent, feeling guilty since he had also been in the dungeon. In the next moment, he said that, actually, it wasn't impossible. Hyun asked what he meant, and our hero said that it wasn't impossible for his friend to become a hunter. He could still do it even without an arm. The boy said he knew the MC was trying to cheer him up, but he shouldn't say things like that so lightly. The protagonist said he wasn't saying it lightly, he was speaking from experience. He had heard of a hunter who lost his right arm during a subjugation, but the hunter didn't give up. He kept training and eventually became even stronger than he was before losing his arm. And he always used to say one thing before the MC could finish. Hyun said, as long as someone is alive, they can still make things work. The protagonist said that was exactly right. When the boy was about to ask the man's name, the protagonist said his name was Chung and that he had passed away a long time ago, which was why his friend didn't know him. But after saying that, the Geo said that Chung Hoon was his grandfather, and even our big guy was surprised by the coincidence. A few hours later, at the academy's training grounds, an explosion happened outside. The reason for it was that Jusok was training with his new bracelet, and the bastard said that the protagonist should just wait and see what was going to happen to him. Someone said they knew he was excited about his new toy, but he needed to calm down. That person was our second heroine, who said that the fight was only the second test, and she knew that Jusok didn't like the MC, but he should be careful not to use too much force or he would be disqualified. He also couldn't use a technique that hadn't been revealed to us yet. The boy said he wouldn't need to use that against our hero because he wasn't strong enough. The shameless professor was thinking that the boy was really good at using his skills, and asking for our heroine's help had been the best decision he could have made. With a smirk, he thought that this was how the MC's reign would come to an end. But at that moment, he remembered that Wushik had said the only person he was afraid of was Jun Woo from 40 years ago. However, Jun kept walking without concern, and he said that was just the phrase of an old fool who still hadn't gotten over the glory of the past. A few years ago, at the headquarters of the Subjugation Exam Management Unit, our hero asked if Chung-hoon was there. After hearing that, someone looked surprised. Looking at our hero, he asked what his boss was doing there since it was already late. The MC said that the number of dungeons had decreased, so he went out for a drink. Woo-shik mentioned that they had brought Hoon's favorite drink. Chung-hoon was the leader of Team 2, and he was one of the most talented people the MC admired. The protagonist asked where Hoon's companions were, and the man said they had stepped out but wouldn't take long to return. The MC said that in that case they could wait, but Chung insisted that they should start drinking without waiting. The MC thought to himself that the only downside to his friend was his love for alcohol. It had already been 5 years since they met and became friends. Before they even realized it, he, Woo-shik, and Hoon had become close comrades. While drinking, our hero asked his friend if he was busy. The man admitted that he really was, but even so, it was something he could still live with. And the reason he said that was because 8 months ago, he had suffered an accident in which he lost his right arm. He told his friend that he shouldn't feel awkward talking about it since accidents were a normal part of life. The protagonist didn't know what to say in that situation, thinking to himself that it was a waste, as his friend was one of the most talented people he had ever known. Chung asked the MC if there was a technique he could learn using only his left arm and wondered if his friend could teach him. After hearing that, Junwoo asked if something like that would really be enough, but the man replied that it was too soon to give up, because as long as he was alive, he could make anything work as long as he didn't quit. And from that moment on, Hoon's body began to recover and his real training started. Using a sword with his left hand was more difficult since he had always relied on his right arm, but in the end, he managed to master it, proving everyone wrong, and his swordsmanship became even stronger than it had been before losing his arm. That proved that Chung was truly a perfect swordsman. The man said the training had been really tough, but our hero told him not to say that, since he was the one who had asked for help in the first place. But at that moment, the protagonist was caught off guard, and he asked if his friend was really still using that. Hoon said of course, because it was a symbol of how much he had trained, and he planned to give it to Dong in the future. The guillotine blade was the wooden sword that Hoon had used during training. It wasn't a blade that could be used in battle, but it was perfect for practice. Woo-shik pointed out that Dong didn't seem interested in becoming a hunter, and asked why Hoon would pass that sword down to him. Hoon said that if that were the case, he would just give it to his grandson instead. The protagonist said that his friend needed to live a long time if he wanted to see his grandson. Woo-shik asked if it wasn't dangerous to say things like that. Chung agreed that it wasn't good to say things like that and asked if our hero had never watched movies. In the next moment, they made a toast, and our hero said they should do their best to get eliminated as soon as possible. Outside the cabin, Junwoo asked if Dong hadn't gotten hurt while playing. Hoon laughed, saying that he had been afraid it was something serious, but he was surprised when he heard what his son had said. With a smile on his face, he said that his son had told him that as long as he was alive, he would find a way to make anything work. And in the end, our hero and Woo-shik had to listen to their friend brag about his son the entire night. Outside the academy, someone was saying that they had left the photo somewhere. That person was Hyun, and he was showing a picture to our couple. The protagonist thought that the moment he saw it, he felt like laughing, because the leader of the Zone 2 camp was someone who loved drinking and chatting. And he was also the swordsman who came closest to perfection in his lifetime. His name was Kim Chung-hoon. Our hero remembered that he had once told his friend to live a long life so he could see his grandchildren. And after recalling that, he had a sad expression, thinking that he shouldn't have said those words back then. Our heroine asked if Hyun's grandfather had passed away a long time ago. The boy confirmed it, saying he had heard that his grandfather had been eliminated in an accident. After hearing that, our hero became deep in thought, and the boy asked if something was wrong with his friend, but the protagonist said it was nothing. Hyun said he was surprised because he didn't know Junwoo was familiar with his grandfather's story. Continuing, he said that, to be honest, it was hard to believe that someone could become the strongest swordsman after losing their right arm. The MC said he was certain it was possible, and the boy said that if his friend talked to his father, they would get along well. The protagonist thought that he had no idea how Dong was doing, so the MC asked if his friend's father was alright. Hyun said that he was fine, and he told our hero that he had tried to convince his father to drop a case he was obsessed with, but despite that, he kept pursuing it. Our hero was confused and asked his friend what case he was talking about. The boy said that it had nothing to do with Junwoo, but mentioned that a few days ago, the MC had asked if anyone had been eliminated during the student council election process, and the boy confirmed that people had indeed been eliminated. After hearing that, our duo was shocked. It was similar to the accident that had happened just days before the exam, when the test was changed and 2 people were crushed by rocks. The MC asked if Dong was investigating that case, and the boy said that was exactly it, which was why he had been fired. It was as if a police officer had tried to take control of the entire Parents Association. so the outcome was inevitable. Our heroine was startled after hearing this. After that, he became a member of the council, and because of that, he wasn't treated well. Eunchae was the only one who accepted him. The MC asked if the candidate nominated by the association had also been involved in the accident, and Hyun said no, since there were only 4 members in the association, and the nominees didn't take the exam with them. And he still thought about it sometimes, always wondering what would have happened if he had reached out just a little earlier. Our heroine asked if that was why he had saved the arrogant boy last time. Han said that, to be honest, there were moments when he regretted it, and in the end, his path to becoming a hunter was in vain. But even so, when he thought about the possibility of someone being eliminated right in front of him, he felt satisfied that he had sacrificed himself instead. Our hero had a smile on his face after hearing that answer. But in the next moment, he was surprised. Lowering himself, he picked something up and wondered if it could be the guillotine blade. Hyun said that it was the only keepsake from Dawn, which his father had kept for years. Our hero thought about how his friend had once said that he would pass that sword down to his grandchildren, and he asked Hyun if he could borrow it. The boy said he didn't mind but asked why. The MC said that his friend had claimed his grandfather's story was impossible, and the boy replied that old stories were always exaggerated. But the protagonist said that this one wasn't exaggerated at all, and then he asked Hyun if he would like to watch the next exam. A few days later, the written test for general subjects took place. It was the first day of the 4-day final exam. In a classroom, several students were working on their exams. Our hero was among them, while thinking that he couldn't understand a single thing on the test questions, and he had never actually attended class since enrolling, so there was no way he could handle a math test when he had spent his entire life fighting monsters. Then he looked to his side, and there was Jusok. The protagonist thought that the extra looked focused on the test, but he obviously hadn't studied for it. He had most likely received the answers and just memorized them. And if this continued, there could be obstacles in Go Ahyun's path. Our heroine didn't seem to be doing very well in the exam. She had a rather peculiar expression on her face. The protagonist wondered if she was okay since she didn't look very healthy. Jungwoo thought about how she had always ranked first in the written exams, so he had no choice but to trust her. But then, out of nowhere, someone hit him on the head with a piece of paper. That person was one of the teachers. He told the protagonist not to look around while taking the test. Feeling awkward, the protagonist said he would pay attention. Several days passed, and now it was the 4th day of the exam. A speaker announcement told students to pay attention, because the final first-year exam, the combat test, would begin soon. All first-year students were required to gather in the main auditorium. Our hero said that it was finally starting. Looking at his future wife, he said they should hurry so they wouldn't be late. The girl agreed. Inside the main gymnasium, our hero commented that there were a lot of people there while our heroine asked him to wait for her. But in the next moment, he looked surprised. I still don't understand why he suddenly looked so shocked since nothing major was shown in this panel. There were many people watching the arena while murmuring things I couldn't quite make out. There were even some reporters there, recording what was about to happen. The MC asked if the exams were always like this. Ayan explained that this was the last exam of the semester, and most of the students who placed highly usually became council members. Expressionless, Jungwoo thought that since they even broadcast subjugations, watching students with abilities fight each other was basically just entertainment. Someone announced that the exam would begin soon. The MC thought to himself that the adults were disgusting for broadcasting kids fighting just to make money. The announcer stated that President Woo-shik would explain the exam rules. The Gyoet said he would explain the test rules for all the students who had studied and trained hard. The first exam would randomly select 2 participants, and the winner would advance to the next test. With an ironic smile, the MC thought that the rules were exactly the same as the ones used during the subjugation tests they conducted among themselves in the past. Basically, the test would continue until a participant either surrendered or was defeated. The winner of the match would earn 1 point, while the loser wouldn't lose anything, just get 0 points. Participants with 0 points could re-enter as many times as they wanted, but if you had at least 1 point and lost, you couldn't participate again. Woo-shik explained that the special protective gear would absorb most of the damage but wouldn't completely protect students from all types of impact. He warned students not to get too excited or use their abilities recklessly. From that moment on, the test for Class A would begin. The goat said he hoped everyone would get good results, and in the next moment, they began drawing lots for the upcoming fights. 2 random extras were chosen, probably characters who would never appear in the story again, so I won't even bother mentioning their names. The announcers instructed the 2 selected students to enter the arena and prepare for the test. The referee told them to move into their starting positions. Then he announced that they could begin. The red-haired student was the first to charge forward. Our heroine was surprised by what she saw. She said it was incredible, and that this was how Class A students fought. Looking at her future husband, she asked the protagonist what he thought about the match. But in the next moment, she was shocked, because our boy was asleep. The girl asked why he was sleeping, especially when Class A was fighting. The MC said that the fight was a mess, and that there was nothing worth watching. Since he hadn't been sleeping well for the past few days because of exam prep, he figured this was a good time to rest. AN asked if he was seriously saying those things after seeing Class A's abilities. At that moment, she wondered what kind of standards our boy had for him to say that without any hesitation. And I was right, those two extras never appeared again. A few hours later, the announcer stated that Class D's fights were over. AN told our hero to wake up. Stretching, he asked if it was already over. The girl confirmed and said that it was their turn now. The announcer stated that the fights for Class E would now begin, so the students should get ready, and at that moment, everyone was trying to leave. They really left and were heading to the cafeteria. And that was exactly it, as the previously packed arena was completely emptied in an instant. The MC asks if their class was really that bad for no one to want to watch their fights, and the girl replies that he was the last person who could say that since he slept through the others' matches. However, in the next moment, the girl is surprised by something, and the reason for that was because Hyun was observing the upcoming rounds. The boy greeted our hero, and the protagonist returned the gesture. The announcer states that they were now going to introduce the first participant from Class E, and our hero thinks that he should preserve his energy and that choosing someone of average skill would be more practical. The first participants from the protagonist's class were our heroine against a background character named Jihai. And after seeing that, Jungwoo says that this wasn't good, since nothing was going as they had planned, but the girl says she would take care of it. Our heroine tells herself that she should remember what she practiced and just follow what she had learned. Our hero says that he wanted 10 consecutive victories and nothing less than that. And after hearing this, Aeon was confused. The protagonist explains that their class had 20 people, so she should try to win exactly 10 consecutive matches. With a smile, our heroine thinks that she will do just that. The referee states that both participants should take their positions. In the next moment, the man says that the match could begin, and the system announces that Ji could use rank D abilities. And out of nowhere, our heroine lands a punch on the girl's face. Because of that, she is knocked to the ground, and the announcer states that Jay had fallen. After this, all the background characters are shocked. In the next moment, the referee declares that our heroine had won the first round, and even Hyun is surprised. The background characters start murmuring among themselves while the protagonist watches the arena with a proud look. However, for some reason, he wonders if that wasn't a bit too much. The boys were wondering if Aeon had really managed to knock someone out without using an ability. Then, in round 2, she also defeats another person. In round 3, it's no different as she takes down another background character without any trouble. The announcer states that our heroine was moving on to the 4th round with 3 consecutive victories, and several background characters were questioning whether she was really from the trash class. Hyun comments that it was truly impressive for her to become that strong in just a month. And looking at someone, he says that she probably had the same talent as her companion. That person was Go Eun-chae, who was observing our heroine. Continuing, he says that this was a test no one really cared about since it was for first years in Class E, then asks if she was there because Aeon was fighting. Or was it because of Jusuk? She asks what that had to do with anything and questions if her friend wasn't helping Jungwoo and Aeon. Hyun replies that he couldn't help anyone alone, and one of his juniors had said they would show him something interesting, which is why he came. After hearing this, Eun-chae is confused since she knew nothing about it. The announcer states that whoever wanted to participate in the next round should step forward. However, none of the background characters wanted to enter the arena. Then the announcer says that if there were no more challengers from Class E, the fights would end, and in the next moment, someone raises their hand. That person was Jusuk, and the man tells the student to step into the arena and prepare for the match. After seeing this, our hero is surprised, thinking that if he wasn't afraid after witnessing Aeon's abilities, he might be hiding something. A few minutes later, the referee states that both participants should take their positions, and our heroine thinks that she was finally going to fight Jusuk and that his ability was long range. When the referee announces that they could start fighting, Aeon charges forward at the same moment, and the background character thinks that she was really going all out. But even so, he smiles and doesn't seem worried. Right after that, an explosion happens inside the arena. Upon seeing this, all the students are shocked, not knowing what had just happened. Even our hero is surprised as he recognized that ability. Hyun looks at Eun-chae and asks what exactly she had taught Jusuk for him to be able to do that. The background character, feeling proud, asks if she had managed to withstand it because of her protective gear, but says that it didn't matter because her endurance was low. Our heroine thinks that this wasn't the bracelet he used to wear and asks where he got that ability. Jusuk says that many people were helping him because of his parents, and that's how he obtained that item. Our heroine asks if he really thought that was something to be proud of, and he says yes, since it was something she could never have, and after hearing that, Ayun got irritated. He asks if she was upset because he mentioned that she didn't have parents, and she tells herself that she shouldn't get angry and fall for his tricks. Then she remembers that our hero had said the first battle was understanding your opponent, and thinks that she first needed to figure out his ability. She wonders what category the extra skill belonged to and concludes that its rank must be much higher than hers. Activating her magic ability, she tells herself that there is only one way to find out, and as she shoots fire in Jusok's direction, she says that she has no choice but to keep fighting. The bastard just laughs and asks if she really thought using D-rank abilities would make any difference. Our heroine thinks that magic category abilities have similar casting speeds, so she should go for long-range attacks, but in the next moment, she is surprised as Jusok fires an explosion at her. However, our heroine manages to defend herself and is only thrown back a few meters. She wonders what that was, because even assuming he controlled the ability, its firing speed was too fast, and she questions whether it really belonged to the magic category. Then he asks if she understood and says that the ability he was using was on a completely different level than those used by people like her. Our heroine thinks that if it were from the magic category, it would be impossible to use abilities consecutively without cooldown, and wonders if the style he was using was combat enhancement, since the only ability she knew that fit this profile was beetle bombardment. She shouted those words while charging at him. The extra also started advancing, saying that she had really figured it out, but it didn't make any difference. In the next moment, he lands a hit, but our heroine manages to defend herself. Right after that, she lands a punch on Jusok's face. The bastard curses at Ayun, but she simply says that, obviously, it made a difference for her to know what ability he was using, because his skill caused an explosion when his fist hit the air, so all she had to do was stop him from landing his punch. The protagonist thinks that she was doing quite well. If she had mistaken it for a fire-based magic category skill, she wouldn't have been able to get close. Since it's difficult to stop an opponent from casting their ability, the standard approach is usually to look for gaps in their defense. But if the skill was an enhancement type, he would have to change his strategy, and since there was no delay between ability activations, using magic category strategies would lead to failure, and the weakness was in the action itself. His skill required large movements to activate, specifically the air attack, and if that action was nullified, the opponent would gain the upper hand. But the answer our heroine arrived at wasn't a perfect one, so she needed to be careful. In the next moment, the extra tried to land an attack on Ayun. However, she once again defended herself with ease. He attempted to strike again, but the girl managed to block it once more, and in the following moment, she landed a blow to his head. As she countered the boy's attacks, she thought that she could do this, and that she would take Jusok down. And right after that, she grabbed both of his arms. The system announced that the user was activating the second form of the flame abilities. Immediately after, our heroine prepared to land a kick on the extra, and at that moment, Jusok thought that he had to defend himself from it. Then, an explosion erupted within the arena. Our heroine was thrown back by the extra's attack and was sent flying several meters away. Jusok was irritated and said that she was acting proud just because she had learned a little martial arts, and asked if she really thought she could block him with just her arms. As he walked toward Ayun, she thought that she had no idea he could cause an explosion using just his knee. Standing in front of our heroine, the extra said that she should know her place, and the system announced that the user was activating an enhancement category ability as the bastard declared that she should be eliminated. In the next moment, he moved to attack her, but someone placed their hands in front of him. That person was the protagonist, who said that was enough and that he would eliminate her if he continued. The narrator states that Ayun was eliminated and that the next participant would be the MC. That bastard comments that our hero had finally decided to show up. However, the protagonist doesn't care about that and asks if our heroine was okay. She responds by saying that it wasn't over yet and that he should go back because his turn hadn't come yet. Our hero thinks that ever since she was hit by the first explosion, she had already reached her limit, and for that, he would acknowledge her fighting spirit. The protagonist tells her that her defeat had already been announced, so the match was over, but the girl tried to say something, and our hero tells her to stop being stubborn because a loss was a loss, and after hearing that, Ayun didn't try to continue. In the next moment, she left the arena. Some people tried to carry her on a stretcher, but she said she was fine and could walk. Shortly after, the protagonist called out to our heroine and told her that she had done a good job, so she shouldn't be sad about losing. After hearing that, Ayun was surprised, and as she walked away, she started to cry. The background character was proud as he called out to our hero, saying that he was worried the protagonist wouldn't show up. But our hero asks if the boy didn't think he had gone too far in his fight against our heroine. Siak says that he went easy on her and even let her walk away, and the MC replies that just because Jusok had obtained a B-rank ability, he was acting arrogant, and he asks if he had forgotten what happened at the warehouse when he tried to attack him. And after hearing that, the background character trembled. He continues, saying that the background character's ability wasn't just any ordinary skill, and asks where he got it from. The boy asks why that mattered to the MC. Our hero says that he didn't need to ask who gave it to him because he could already imagine who that person was. And you remember someone saying that what happened was an accident and that he was also one of the victims. Thinking that the man from the past was very similar to Junman, he wonders if the professor was that man's son. However, in the next moment, the narrator states that the second round could begin, and the MC thinks that he'll just do what needs to be done, telling himself that Hyun should pay attention because he wouldn't be giving demonstrations all the time. Hyun was watching the arena while wondering if his friend was really planning to use only his right hand. The background character starts laughing and says there's a limit to how much the MC could underestimate people, asking if he really planned to fight using only one hand. And as his aura flared up, Jusok declared that he was going to beat up our hero. In the next moment, he began activating an ability, and he activated one of his skills to fight against the protagonist. Right after that, he started throwing multiple punches in our hero's direction. This caused several explosions throughout the arena. Even the students far away in the stands were affected by the attacks. The entire arena was in flames as the boy continued his relentless assault, and the guy just wouldn't stop. He was still attacking our hero even after about 7 panels. Hyun comments that this was supposed to be the first fight of the year, yet had already reached this level. Finally, the background character stopped attacking, and laughing, he asks if our hero really thought that just being a little athletic made him someone more special than the others. But that didn't matter since everything was about abilities, and no matter how much he tried to show off, he wouldn't be a match for him. However, our hero says that kids these days really had no hope, and after hearing that, Jusok became scared. Behind the smoke, the protagonist says that young people really thought that making reckless attacks would solve anything, and holding a wooden sword in his hand, he asks why the background character closed his eyes and used his ability carelessly. Jusok says that doesn't make any sense and asks if the protagonist was really saying that he hadn't been hit even once. The MC says that the boy really was an idiot since the explosion from his skill only reached 1 meter, while the arena was much larger, and because of that, he hadn't needed to dodge a single attack. Charging toward the background character, the MC says that he was going to teach him how to fight, and after seeing that, the boy was left confused, thinking that this was perfect for him. In the next moment, he attempted to land a punch on the protagonist, but for some reason he became scared after doing so. And the reason for that was that our hero had managed to hit the extra with just that wooden sword. Jusok was wondering what had happened to his ability since it hadn't activated. But at that moment, he trembled once again, because the protagonist was looking at him expressionlessly, using only one of his hands, and the boy wondered why smoke was coming out of the protagonist's sword. With a frightened expression, he asked if our hero had managed to deflect the explosion with a wooden blade. Junwoo said that if Jusok didn't believe it, he could try attacking again, and that's when the guy lost it. Thinking about finishing off our hero and making him kneel before him, he started throwing a series of random attacks at the protagonist again. But in the next moment, a pained expression appeared on his face, and obviously the reason for that was that the protagonist had landed another hit on him. Unsha was also surprised and wondered if our hero had really managed to block the explosions with a wooden sword. Since it wasn't even a bullet from a gun, it should have been impossible for him to stop an explosion in the same second. Hyun explained that the wooden sword he had lent to the MC had the ability to cut through mana. Che asked if he was saying that the MC neutralized the skill by cutting the mana before the explosion happened, and the boy replied that there was no other way to explain it. And he asked if our second heroine had another theory about what he had done. She questioned whether our hero was cutting invisible mana with an accuracy of 0.01 seconds right when the ability was activated, and if anyone said that was possible, there could only be 2 explanations. Either the person was a fraud, or they were hunters from 40 years ago, back when the legendary Junwoo was still alive. The extra was kneeling in front of our hero, thinking that none of this made any sense as he was losing to a special admission student who was holding a wooden sword, and he was using a B-rank ability with an unrestricted core, yet he still couldn't win. With a poorly drawn frame of mind, he thought that this couldn't be happening, since a student council member's reputation and his hunting career were being destroyed. Starting to lose his mind, the guy thought that this should be impossible, and he wouldn't let something like this happen no matter what. He was going to defeat our hero at all costs. Standing up, he said that ever since our hero appeared, his life had been completely ruined. In the next moment, the system started warning that the user was activating a new ability, and right after that, he prepared to attack, saying that he was going to crush our hero no matter what. After saying that, the entire arena began to shake, and even stones started falling from the structure. The narrator said that the extra should stop as he wasn't authorized to use that power, and other people started calling the guards to stop him. Hyun was wondering what kind of ability this was and said that if it continued, the entire auditorium would be destroyed. Che was calling Jusok crazy, but she was also partly responsible for this mess. The extra was losing it, as a dark aura began to emerge from his body. But in reality, it was a red aura that was launched toward the MC, and the system announced that the ability's name was Nuclear Explosion. Our hero stood still as the attack came toward him. However, in the next moment, he got into a fighting stance and prepared to counterattack the extra's attack. It almost seemed like the attack really was similar to a nuclear explosion, as it took on a physical form. And right after that, the entire screen turned white, and an image of the protagonist being scorched appeared. Then, another massive explosion occurred in the arena, and for some reason, the extras were still sitting there after everything that had happened. But that's when they got screwed too, as sparks from the MC's counterattack flew in their direction. Then they panicked and started running since they had no reason to stay there. But the situation in the arena was really bad, and one person was still standing there, though it wasn't clear whether it was our hero or the extra. But in reality, it was the extra who was still standing, his face showing exhaustion. The guy was starting to laugh, and he really began to lose it, but our hero was still alive. However, now he was kneeling in front of Jusok, and the boy asked how it felt to lose after acting so high and mighty. Getting closer to the MC, he said he wouldn't forgive our hero, but even so, he should consider himself lucky, because he didn't want to become someone who eliminated others, so he would be generous and only lead the protagonist crippled. But before he could do anything, someone landed an attack on him. The background character wondered how this person had suddenly gotten behind him, and out of nowhere, the guy was flipped upside down. He fell face first onto the ground. While trying to figure out when he had been hit, our hero ordered him to get up. With a different expression, the MC said he wouldn't repeat himself and told the boy to stand up. I think the protagonist is really angry now because he says that Jusok had crossed the line. The background character still didn't understand what was happening and was trying to get up, but he was already trembling. He was even sweating in front of our hero, and when he tried to activate the nuclear explosion ability again, the protagonist hit him once more. Man, and the guy even did something so crazy that I won't even describe it because it might get demonetized. In the next moment, he collapsed on the ground again after being struck by our hero. As he tried to get up once more, he muttered to himself that he couldn't breathe. But at that moment, the protagonist told him to stand up again because he wasn't done yet. Now crying, the background character thought about how scared he was of being eliminated, and if he stood up again, he was sure the protagonist wouldn't spare him. Trying to back away from our hero, the background character was begging for forgiveness, pleading with the MC not to eliminate him. He admitted he was wrong and swore he would never do something like that again because he was truly sorry, but the protagonist was still furious as he asked if the boy even understood the ability he had tried to use, as it was dangerous even in real battles. And because of the background character, the entire auditorium was nearly vaporized, and everyone had to run for their lives. After hearing this, the background character started crying, saying he never wanted that to happen, that he had only heard it was a strong ability and didn't know its true power. But guys, the MC was really pissed off, as he said that the person who used that skill 40 years ago gave the exact same excuse and asked if Jusok knew what happened to him. Trembling in fear, the background character said he didn't know and asked what had happened. Activating a unique ability, the protagonist stated that someone like Jusok didn't deserve to become a hunter. But the guy really never learns because, in a desperate attempt to make the protagonist stop, he asked if our hero knew who his father was, and if anything happened to him, his father would never forgive our hero. However, the protagonist didn't care in the slightest, as he simply launched an attack toward the boy. And I really think things went south because the panel is shattered, and maybe our hero actually eliminated the background character. But I'm still not sure about that, since after the protagonist's attack, a huge cloud of smoke rose. Some men were wondering what had happened, while another said he couldn't tell because there was too much smoke. In the next moment, they saw the background character lying on the ground, and the narrator announced that the test could no longer continue, so the fight was over and the students had to leave the auditorium. As the announcement was repeated, the protagonist was leaving the arena without that aura that even made me shiver. Someone asked if the sword the protagonist was holding belonged to Chum Hoon. That person was our director, who had a serious expression as he looked at our hero. Wushik said that his friend had gone overboard in a fight against a student, but without caring at all about what his friend said, the protagonist replied that Wushik shouldn't act as if he were still in his prime, and for that reason from that moment on, he would be more aggressive and wouldn't care about keeping his identity hidden. Following our hero, the director said that the good days of the past were over, and the MC asked if his friend really thought he would just sit around forever. A few hours later, inside the men's restroom, someone was holding a phone while Minister Myunjin was calling them. And of course, the one receiving the call was the shameless professor. Going back a few years, our hero was running somewhere. For some reason, the protagonist had a worried expression on his face, and I couldn't figure out what was happening since it hadn't been revealed yet. Now I think I understand. His team's base was basically on fire. There were even several people lying on the ground, most likely taken out. Even a child's toy was there, probably belonging to someone who was no longer alive. Our hero was truly terrified, as his expression looked far from good. Chung's sword was on the ground, and after seeing that, the protagonist immediately recognized it as the blade of the guillotine. And at that moment, the king felt true terror, because when he looked down, he saw an unexpected scene. There was someone lying on the ground, and if I'm not mistaken, a man was embracing a woman. After witnessing that, our hero dropped to his knees before the scene. In the next moment, several people began arriving at the site and called the protagonist captain. And after realizing that, our guy asked what had happened there. One of the people said that a monster had escaped from a blue-ranked dungeon, invaded the camp, and unleashed a high-destruction attack. The protagonist was furious and said that the basic protocol was to prioritize eliminating dungeons around the camp, then demanded to know what really happened. One of the people finally raised their hand and said that the three of them were responsible for it since they had failed to exterminate the dungeon. Our hero was extremely irritated and said that it was just a blue-ranked dungeon. There was no way someone could fail there. The guy had clearly messed up since he couldn't even say what had actually happened. But one of his companions bowed, apologizing, and said that Hunter Cha had insisted on going with fewer people than necessary for the extermination. And guys, this was the moment when the protagonist truly lost his temper. The MC asked how many people whom had informed about the plan, and the man said 7. Then the MC asked how many actually went, and the man answered 3. Our hero was not happy. He had to hold himself back from yelling at them. Then he asked if the 3 of them always tried to take the supplies and loot meant for 7 people with just 3. The man said that wasn't the case, that this was the only time, and that what happened was an unavoidable accident because dungeon interference had occurred. But at that moment, the protagonist stopped holding back and said that he didn't care if they were stealing supplies. But there was one thing that could never be forgiven, and he asked if the man knew what that was. In the next moment, he declared that he would never forgive someone who ruined the work of his entire life that he had put into the camp. Throwing the man to the ground, he told the extra to look at what had happened, because due to his mindless recklessness, he had caused the camp to be destroyed, saying that he hadn't endured all those hardships just to witness something like this, and asked if the extra thought the extermination team was risking their lives for nothing. The guy kept telling himself that this wasn't his fault, and he shouted that he didn't want this to happen either, that he couldn't have known dungeon interference would occur, and that he was also a victim. Then he begged the MC for another chance, saying he would return all the profits they had made and could even pay for the camp's reconstruction. But ignoring all of that, the protagonist activated an ability on the guillotine and declared that the man was officially expelled from the extermination team. Because of this, his residence at the camp and his status as a hunter were revoked. And guys, the MC looked absolutely different in this panel. He stated that from that moment on, Che would never again dream of becoming a hunter. And what I expected to happen actually happened, but I won't say it. You already know. Returning to the present, the shameless professor was ignoring all of the minister's calls. He already had 6 missed calls. The guy was cursing Siok, thinking about how many times he had told the boy to control his strength and never use nuclear explosion. And now it was all over. It had been broadcast to the entire country, and they would probably start investigating everything and uncovering every detail. The worst part of all was that the bracelet wasn't registered, which was illegal, and maybe they would even find out about the incident from 2 years ago. And poorly designed, he tells himself that all the blame will fall on him since the association had a lot of influence. The guy just punches the mirror, and that's it. He doesn't even apologize to the mirror, telling himself to stay calm since he needed to retrieve the bracelet, and as long as they didn't find out who gave it to the boy, nothing would happen to him. And anyway, the minister had his own position to protect, and Yunchi also had no reason to speak. That's why he decided to think about the rest later, since the main priority at the moment was retrieving the bracelet. However, the next moment, someone asks if the man was looking for that and throws the item to the ground. That person was our hero, who remained expressionless. Junmin asks what the MC was doing there and questions if he didn't hear the announcement that students should return to the classroom, and the MC asks why the man is getting angry. He says he thought Junmin might be looking for the bracelet, so he brought it to his teacher. Since he had overheard some things during the exam, he had heard that they had put a restriction on dangerous abilities that exceeded a certain power level. But the ability that Siok was using was so powerful that even all the locks couldn't detect the skill, and it destroyed the entire arena. And he asks if the man knew why no restriction was placed on such a dangerous ability. He says that the only possible explanation was that it was a core that hadn't been registered by the association, and after hearing that, the shameless man trembles, saying that a teacher gave an unregistered core to a student, and if it was discovered that this caused problems, things would get difficult for him. Junmin says the protagonist was just spouting nonsense and asks if the boy had any proof that he had given the ability to Seok. The MC says that before, the man was blinded by greed and interfered with the number of hunters sent home, which caused the annihilation of the 2nd District's field. For that reason, he cut off all the mana the man had in his body and removed all his team members from the camp. And was it just a coincidence that he was seeing the same abilities from before, ones that weren't common skills? When he mentioned the name of the minor character he had cut off moments ago, the man asked who the protagonist even was, since he knew his father's identity. Even the protagonist was surprised, as he didn't know that Junmin was Cha's son, though it wasn't shocking since the two had done the same things in their lives. And right after saying that, he lands a strike on the man's face, saying that because of his actions, one of his students lost an arm, and today, several students almost lost their lives. And even 2 years ago, he had already made huge mistakes, but there was one thing he could never tolerate, no matter what happened. That was people ruining what he worked so hard to build, something he had put his life into. And he says he's going to ask a question, and the shameless man must answer immediately. Then he asks if it was him who gave the unregistered core to Seok, but the man says nothing. He even tries to escape from the protagonist and attempts to grab the bracelet to attack him. He actually manages to grab it, then he tries to strike our hero with it, but in reality it wasn't like that at all. He throws the bracelet to the ground and destroys the item out of nowhere. And the guy really starts kicking the item to try to destroy it completely. Then he looks proudly at the protagonist, thinking there was no way he could be incriminated anymore, asking what the MC thought he was going to say to the police since he had no evidence, and questioning whether he really thought they would believe the word of a high school student, saying that adults weren't a joke and that he hadn't just done this to Seok, he was even attacking a teacher. And from that moment on, our hero's school life was over because no one would believe him. But then he trembles again as someone arrives, asking why it was so noisy there. And that person was obviously our director, who had arrived to set things straight. Junmin says the president arrived just in time, as the protagonist was threatening him and had even attacked him. For that reason, the MC should be expelled from school, but Wushik says the man had broken the mirror and needed to lower his voice. Trying to escape that situation, the man said he had broken the mirror by accident, so the protagonist asked if the director had heard that. After all, he hadn't done anything and was an innocent person, but Wushik said that, in reality, he thought the teacher had done it. Then he asked if our hero had found any clues. The protagonist threw the phone into the director's hand, and the man said that Junwoo should be more careful since there were still many installments left to pay. He also said that his boss should learn how to use his phone, and while the MC was scolding Wushik, the shameless man watched the situation in disbelief. As he was leaving, the director asked what they should do, and the protagonist said that first, the school would have to announce that the event had happened. Junmin asked why the president was using formal language with a student, but Wushik ignored the man and told someone over the phone to make an official statement. Since the matter involved an illicit request, after that, the teacher became frightened and asked what the director was doing, because if he went through with it, it wouldn't just affect him. Even Minister Manjin would be impacted, and he asked if he could handle the consequences. But the director said that he still hadn't forgotten what happened during the accident 2 years ago, and even if it meant losing his position, if it had just been an accident, at least there would be nothing to be ashamed of. Yet in the end, something like this had happened again, and he really couldn't look at that person without feeling ashamed, leaving the man confused. Wushik said it was because the teacher didn't understand that this was how things work, and he asked if he hadn't been clear last time since the only person he feared was Junwoo from 40 years ago. Then he thanked Junmin for all the hard work he had done for the school of the past years. As he left, the man started calling out to the president, but Wushik didn't care and just kept walking. Wushik said it would be difficult to connect the teacher to the minister, and there might not even be an investigation, but the MC said that once something goes public, it's hard to hide what happened. That's why his friend should spread what happened as much as possible, as he knew someone in the media and should ask that person to share the information as widely as they could. Then he asked if his friend could add another favor. It was about Chung's son, who had been unfairly dismissed while investigating what happened 2 years ago. Since he was probably eager for revenge, they should give him a chance. But in the next moment, he asked if the protagonist's arm was okay, since the penalty from the guillotine blade was hard to endure with the MC's physical condition, and even he had landed a hit on the arm before. The system stated that the penalty had been activated on the user, meaning that the conjurer would experience the same state as the target affected by the weapon's ability. Wushik said his friend should go to the doctor to get some medicine, but the MC said he was fine and that there was no need to worry about something like that. As he left, he asked his friend to take care of what he had requested because he had something to return, so he would go ahead. While he was leaving, the director was watching the protagonist with a smile on his face. Somewhere else, Hyun was sitting on a bench in the square. Someone said they had finally found their friend, and that person was the protagonist, who said he had been looking for Hyun for a while. The boy asked our hero if that had been intentional, if he had fought with his weaker hand on purpose just to show him something. The protagonist smiled, saying that Hyun's grandfather's story was not an exaggeration. That was why he wanted to show his friend, and that was all. And no matter what his friend felt in that moment, the rest would depend entirely on him, the protagonist said as he handed Hyun the wooden sword. The boy took the sword and stared at it for a few seconds. Our hero was walking away, and that was it. Even though the boy was about to say something, in the end he didn't. And for some reason he had a guilty look as he stared at the blade in his hand. But in truth, it wasn't guilt. He was just wondering if he could really do all the things the protagonist had done with just one arm. And suddenly, something happened that I can't quite understand. But in reality, the father of our third greatest GOAT was calling him. He feels a bit confused, not knowing why his father was calling. But in the next moment, the man asks if his son is okay. He had heard that something had happened at school, so he asks if his son wasn't injured. Hyun says that he's fine and that nothing happened. Then the man says he's relieved since he didn't watch the event because of work and asks his son to come home earlier, to which the boy agrees. But anyway, the video was still circulating, so he asks who the boy was. The one who was using a sword with only his left hand, and was even wielding the same sword as Hyun. And realizing that the boy didn't respond, the man says that if it was difficult for his son to answer, he didn't have to, since he was probably tired of hearing stories like that. However, the next moment, the boy says that he won't give up. He is definitely going to become a hunter authorized by the association and will not give up no matter what happens. Basically, a news report was covering what happened at school and the accident Seok caused, which led to the destruction of the auditorium. It also stated that the police were investigating the minister to determine whether there had been a request for the illegal ability. At the school's academy, where the protagonist and our heroine were still training, someone was watching the news circulating on various websites. That person was our hero, who thought that public opinion seemed to be going well. And it was also great that Dong had gotten his job back. Aeon says that Junwoo had been looking at his phone for a long time. She mentions that people wouldn't stop talking about our hero, and probably everyone at school already knew him. However, he asks if the same thing wasn't happening to her, since people were talking more about her than about him. There were several comments praising her for holding her ground against Seok for a while in the arena. In the next moment, the heroine starts blushing, and Junwoo says that people were even calling her the one-punch girl. Right after that, someone enters the room and asks if they were still training. Obviously, it was Hyun, who congratulates her for becoming a member of the council, but our heroine asks what he's talking about. Even the MC didn't understand, saying that she hadn't been officially nominated and that it was too soon to relax until it was confirmed, but Hyun says that you never know what could happen. However, in the next moment, our hero was surprised. The boy says that he had practiced with the guillotine blade every day, but even so, he wasn't doing very well, and because of that, he had a small problem. The protagonist says he would tell his friend, but it wouldn't be easy, because if he wanted to be as good as his grandfather, he would have to go through a lot. And the boy smiles, saying that even if it wasn't easy, he didn't care because he wanted to become stronger, so he asks our hero to teach him. Aeon tells Hyun to be careful because the MC was really scary, and the protagonist says that if she had complaints, she could stop training with him. But in the next moment, someone arrives, calling the boy son, which surprises the protagonist. Obviously, it was Hyun's father, who asks if the two were his son's friends, and says it was a pleasure to meet them. The man continues, saying that he knew about our hero, and that he had been incredible in his fight since he had seen the boy use the same sword as his father. He says that he was surprised and asks if our hero's name was Junwoo, to which the MC confirms. Going back to the past, 3 men were begging the protagonist not to expel them from the camp. However, our hero doesn't care and says that his teammates should exclude those people, but the extras keep begging for forgiveness. They were still pleading for mercy as our protagonist walked away from that place, and the base was truly destroyed. There were flames everywhere, and most of the structures were in ruins. Someone calls out to our hero again, saying that they had found a survivor in that place, and it was a child. The protagonist thinks that this 10-year-old child had really grown up a lot, and now even had a son, saying to himself that it was a complicated feeling. A few hours later, someone announces that the class was over, and starting the next day, students could apply for the council, and anyone who wanted to join should go to the office to get the application form. After hearing that, some extras started talking among themselves, and the protagonist stood up. He said that he and our heroine should sign up and asked if it really had to be today or if they could register the next day. Our hero said there was something he wanted to check, so it had to be today. At the office of the college where our hero studied, he and our girl were standing in front of the door. She asked what was wrong and if he wasn't going to enter, but the protagonist said she should wait because he wanted to check something. In the next moment, someone was leaving the office, and that person was a girl who hadn't appeared until now, so she was probably just an extra or maybe someone important in the future. But actually, I think she isn't anyone important and is just an extra, because she said she knew our hero and that he was the one who defeated Jusok, and it was amazing to see a celebrity in person. Then she looked to the side and saw our heroine, asking if she was the protagonist's girlfriend, and at that moment, Aeon started blushing and said it wasn't like that at all. They were just classmates. The girl said she was just joking since she already knew our heroine, and she kept talking about a bunch of boring things. While telling her couple that she was a student from Class B, the protagonist thought he didn't like the way she was talking. She extended her hand to our heroine, saying her name and asking if the three of them could be friends. But our couple didn't say anything and just had peculiar expressions as they looked at the girl. She said they shouldn't be so cautious since they would be seeing each other often, so they shouldn't be shy, and the protagonist asked why. The girl said it was because she had also applied for the student council, and there was no reason not to do so. Besides, the skills of our couple were too good for someone from Class E, and also Siak had been expelled, so it was practically impossible for the three of them not to be accepted. With a smile, our hero said that was really interesting, since Siak didn't apply to the council and was expelled, and she was saying her spot was already secured, then basically, the results had already been decided. With a distinct expression, he asked if she was affiliated with the association, but the girl didn't answer and started trembling. Our protagonist thought he was right, and there was only one thing left to confirm. The reason he hadn't entered was to wait at the door because everyone who wanted to join the council would go to the office, and then he could find someone from the association. And his prediction was spot on since he had found one of those people. But actually, she didn't tremble for long, because in the next moment she smiled, saying that no one besides the school executives should know about the association, and our hero said that he had some people feeding him information. The girl said it wasn't a coincidence that Siak had been eliminated, and now she understood the real reason why. To be honest, she wasn't someone who liked the things he did either, and even if he got expelled to Class E, he shouldn't bring shame to Class B. As she kept rambling on, our couple continued looking at her with their usual expressions. Extending her hand again, she said there was no reason for them to worry. But once again, our couple kept ignoring her with those same expressions. The girl was getting irritated and asked if they were going to play hard to get because becoming friends with Class B students would be good for them. But the MC said he wasn't sure about that. Warren started laughing and said that he really didn't know anything, asking if he had lost touch with reality because he became famous and if he really thought all the student council members were on the same level. The protagonist thought that the girl wasn't completely wrong, since even his own friend had been treated poorly by the council members when he first joined, and he said he didn't care if this girl was from Class B or even if she got accepted into the council, saying that he only came to that place to find her and wasn't interested in making friends there. And from the beginning, she had picked the wrong opponent. After hearing that, the girl looked confused. The protagonist said that the reason for that was because he wasn't applying for the council, since, in reality, Aeon was the one interested in it. And after hearing that, the girl finally realized that from the very beginning, she had been fighting the wrong person. A few hours later, on the face of someone, I don't know who, some people were discussing the case of the shameless teacher and the minister, who were both under investigation. These people were part of the association and were worried that if the two admitted that the association was involved, they would be exposing themselves. A woman says that even if the minister doesn't say anything, they could still get caught in the investigation, and it wasn't as if they had come this far easily. A man says that all the associations could be in danger if this was discovered, so they wouldn't just sit back and watch the situation unfold. Another man agrees, saying that the director was present in the third-year association, and it seemed like they weren't talking about Director Wushik. People assume that's the case since he was a member of the board of directors and had influence in the hunting industry. And it really wasn't Wushik, as a shadow appears that clearly doesn't belong to him. And this guy is really tough since he had established multiple associations. The one from earlier says that if the situation continues, the important thing is that the vice president becomes an executive, because if things turn out differently, they will need to change their plans. The man says that he had already considered that, and it would be difficult to continue working with Minister O. I think this guy they're talking about is Seok's father. The woman asks if everyone there didn't at least have a contract with the minister, and the man replies that they had some dealings, but nothing significant. Another person says that they had discussed some things with the minister, but it wouldn't be a problem if they didn't work out since he had other plans. But regardless, it was still an embarrassment that the department minister was out. Then another person says that depending on who replaces Jusok, they might be able to fill the vacant spot. And at that moment, they all think of our hero. Someone asks if it really had to be him, and another person says there was no reason for him not to become a member. But the previous person argues that it wasn't ideal for someone without connections to enter. However, the woman from the beginning says that wasn't the case, because no matter how much she thought about it, something about the situation seemed suspicious. Since the MC won the fight against Jusok, It was a normal outcome, and they shouldn't have to worry about it, but there was a problem. With Seok disqualified, the boy could just stay still and become a council member. But then, out of nowhere, the president himself made an official statement. And the man says that it seemed very strange how much they had escalated the issue, because the president had nothing to gain from this. Normally, he would have chosen to cover up the case rather than expose the academy's flaws. Yet he decided to publicly sever ties with the minister. And that could only mean one thing, that there was something between the MC and the president. And it wasn't just any kind of relationship. It might even allow him to control the president like a puppet directly. Looking at the woman, one of the men asks if she really meant that if Junwoo became a council member, the president would stay silent. They had tried many times to contact him, but he never sold himself out, and now they were in the same boat. And even though his influence didn't compare to that of the board of directors members, he was one of their former companions, so he might even be better than Minister Oh. The people felt proud of this, but one of them was looking at the situation with a doubtful expression. His name was Chang-soo, and he was wondering if everyone really intended to abandon Minister Oh, because the project he was working on depended entirely on Myungjin, and without his help, he wouldn't be able to do anything. And with the minister's downfall, he was the only one completely screwed in this situation. Now that things had turned out this way, his position was about to collapse, and he needed to find a way to stay on top. In the next moment, his daughter was calling, and he wonders why she was calling right now. He says that he's busy, but the girl tells him that our hero won't be running for the council. After hearing that, the man is shocked. I think this girl was the one who was talking to the protagonist earlier. It really was her, and she says that Ayan is going to apply, and she's certain of it because she asked the teacher to make sure. The man thought that our heroine was Unche's sister, and that she was definitely the granddaughter of Seokdu, who was one of the most influential people at the moment. It wasn't as if anyone besides Junwoo running for the council would change anything, but the situation would be completely different if it were Aeon. In the next moment, someone asked if there was something wrong with their boss, but the man said it was nothing. He needed to leave because his daughter had called and needed his help. Finally, all that conversation was over. I was going crazy for writing so much of their dialogue. In the parking lot, the man was using his phone, and then he called someone whose identity had not yet been revealed. But now we know who it was since the man asked if he was speaking with Unche, saying that he had something very important to discuss with her. A few hours later, at a restaurant, Che asked how the man got her number, and the man said that his guild was still one of the largest in the country and had the contact information of almost every hunter. He apologized for reaching out to her so suddenly. The girl said that the man mentioned he had something important to tell her and asked what it was. He said that she probably already knew that the first-year students were trying to join the council and asked if she knew who was planning to run. Che said she already had an idea of who it was, even though she didn't like him, and the man said that if she thought it was the MC, she was wrong, because his daughter had told him that the person running for the council wasn't the protagonist. In reality, the one planning to apply for the council was Aeon, and after hearing that, the girl was surprised. And when she asked where he got that information, the man said he had heard it from his own daughter, saying that ever since Juseo got involved in this, he no longer cared about the council. But that wasn't the same for Cha, and the girl asked what exactly he meant by that. The man said that, obviously, if her sister became a council member, Yoon-chae would become more worried, and it was likely that the complicated situation with her family would escalate because of it. And if that happened, he was sure that Seokdu wouldn't be pleased. And of course, that wouldn't be good for the girl either. He said that he could help with this situation under certain conditions, and she didn't need to worry too much since they weren't impossible demands or anything that would inconvenience her. Then the man asked our second heroine to take his daughter on a public hunt and to say during an interview that Horan was her competent disciple. Then the man asked if her expression was because she was confused by his request. He explained that his guild was very large in Korea, but they couldn't compare to the Hunter Association. So if, besides being a council member, his daughter was also under Che's guidance, the girl asked if that was what he wanted for his daughter. Chang-soo said that she was right, because just like she had increased the association's influence, Jayan could become the face of the Acres Guild, and in that way, he wouldn't need the minister or director Seokdu anymore. But he admitted that his daughter's skills weren't good and that she had only reached Class B because he had used his influence. Che asked if it wouldn't make more sense to hire a teacher for her, but the man said there was no need for that because he didn't need real ability. Since from the start, his daughter had no talent as a hunter, and as her father, he already knew that very well. That was why he needed to be efficient, and the girl asked if the man planned to turn his daughter into a mascot, and he said that was exactly it. He told the girl that this should be enough to cover everything and asked what she thought about it. She said he had mentioned a plan and asked what it was, and the man said she didn't need to worry because he wouldn't go as far as Director Seokdu. But after saying that, he told himself that he shouldn't have mentioned the director, and he added that, in any case, she didn't need to worry because he was just going to send his team to scare her. But Chas said that wouldn't work on her sister, so he asked if the second heroine had a better plan for it. The girl says that he should do everything to stop her, even if they had to use force for it. And before leaving, she said she had just one more thing to say. Then she asks if the man had told the other parents in the association or something like that. However, Chengsu is surprised after hearing that. And with that usual expression of his, he asks who would benefit from this. A few years ago, there were 2 photos at a funeral. There were 2 people kneeling on the ground while looking at it, and one of them was our heroine, who was crying. Someone approaches from behind, saying that even after the coffin was closed, those people were still acting that way, and a woman looks at that man with an irritated expression. She moves toward him, asking how he dared to appear in that place after doing all those things. That person was saying so many things, and in her mind, the blame for her daughter's elimination was on that man. But actually, I don't think it was just in her head, since the woman asks if the man really thought no one would find out that it was all his fault. However, his expression doesn't change, and he says that he was also sad about losing his son, that it wasn't enough for his son to be taken from him, but even his life was stolen, and he asks if he shouldn't be the one feeling angry. And after hearing that, the woman was confused but was still crying. I think she was giving up because I believe her name started trembling out of nowhere. That's right, because she tells the man to leave that place. The man says that he put some money in the woman's account because of what happened, and in the next moment, he looks back and sees that our heroine is looking at him with tears on her face. Then the man calls in Che and says they should leave that place. Man, Che was heartless since childhood, as she was expressionless in that situation. She turned her back without even caring about what had happened, and guys, this is the moment I will no longer call her the second heroine. While leaving, the woman says that the man will be eliminated sooner or later. She keeps saying that as he walks away without looking back. Back to the present, our heroine wakes up from that dream that might have actually happened in the past. She tells herself that in the past few days, she has been dreaming about it all the time, and she looks to the side, seeing a picture of her family from many years ago.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.